What's up, and welcome in to Cincinnati Bengals Talk. We're already clowning here on a Monday. It's almost draft time. In fact, the NFL draft starts in less than 72 hours, and that's why it's time for our third annual Set the Bengals Draft Board. We're 2 for 2, and the fellas are back to make it 3 for 3. I'm James Rapien. This is Cincinnati Bengals Talk, and for the third straight year, we have draft guy Jared, we have Joe Goodberry, we have Jake Liscow, we have Patrick Carlisle, we have Bengals Sands, Mike Santagata, Matt Minich, and Andrew Fox Miller, who yelled at me about getting my makeup done in time, and obviously we're 12 minutes past our scheduled time. What we're doing here, and I'll kick to Joe Goodberry, but it's pretty simple. We're setting the Bengals board. What we think the Bengals board, their draft board, will be on Thursday night. We're going to set it here tonight. And the past two drafts, Joe, that we've done this, we've gotten it right. Myles Murphy 2 years ago, Amarius Mims last year. It's time to three-peat, my friend.
And that means we're going to absolutely blow it this time, more than likely. But no, I feel good. It's the process that I enjoy doing with you guys. It's something I've always wanted to do, where we're trying to mimic what the Bengals are doing, right? They have their scouts that do their work all through the season. They get their grades. They present them to the team and to Duke Tobin and the coaches. The coaches will take their grades on players they've done the postseason, the offseason work on, and they'll come together. And then with 3 weeks to go pretty much before the draft, they will hammer it out every single day and present themselves with mock drafts, with scenarios, with this guy versus that guy. Every time you move a guy up or down the board and say, would we take this guy at 17, at 49, at 81? It changes the conversation again, because now you're pairing two other guys together. So that's where we're at. I've given a list of names and spreadsheets to everyone in here. Everyone ranked them how they wanted to, and then we put it together to have one master board that we're going to go with tonight. And the idea is to mimic what the Bengals do in another way too. The Bengals put their first, second, third round all throughout the draft. Their round grades go into buckets of a 1A, a 1B, and a 1C. So if they're at 17, you don't want to say, all right, we've got two guys here in 1B, but we really like this guy in 1C. We're going to draft from the next bucket. The Bengals want to stay in the bucket they're in. And you should have already hammered that out before you get to the draft, right? All of this happens now. So when you're on the clock, you're just making a pick. So that's where we're at today, is we're hammering this out. 3 weeks worth of work, probably in 2 hours here, as we try and get close to this.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get through the first round. I think this year is going to be tough, just because it could be. I don't know everybody's consensus ranking or everybody's rankings yet, but in how everybody feels. But I think the NFL is more, and we talked about this on Locked On today, Jake, is going to be, especially right around when the Bengals pick, probably 14 on, 15 on, really split in how they feel about some of these guys. And the Bengals may have someone ranked 30th that another team takes. Maybe the Falcons take him 15th. And there's going to be a lot of shuffling and a lot of differences in opinion across the league. So maybe that'll be the case with us tonight. And as Duke Tobin said today, you try to find a consensus and common ground. Otherwise, you move on to the next player. So we'll see if we can do that.
Duke also said they were wide open and didn't need any starters, though. So I think it's fair to say that Duke Tobin might lie sometimes.
Yeah, but I that's what they're doing that now. Like, I don't think things are set. I think Joe's right. Like, this is when they're getting those buckets organized, and we got to organize these buckets. So let's do that without further ado, fellas. I think that's why we're all here. Maybe we'll get to round 2 if we do that. Travis Hunter in 1A. I don't know how much time we need to spend on him, but I will say this, just with Travis Hunter, Duke Tobin, Colorado alum, has mentioned Travis Hunter like 5 times this offseason. Clearly loves him. So just want to throw that little nugget out there.
We had 3 guys here that we all across the board said they're 1A players. And that's why I put them in yellow to the right there. It's a score to help me rank these based on how you guys rank them. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, we all agreed are 1A prospects. Then there were 3 guys here that not everyone agreed on, but scored really high, meaning most of us had them as 1A prospects. Ashton Genty, Will Campbell, Amon Membo, right? I don't think there's a couple guys here that may have say, oh no, I think Membo should be a 1B player, or Will Campbell should be a 1B, or Ashton Genty should be a 1C. I think there's actually someone that had one of these guys as a 1C player, but it really doesn't matter. We don't have to spend too much time on the blue chip players in this class, because we all agree they're great players. If they're there, we're going to take one of these guys, right? If that's why we're ranking them that high. Because if one guy was still there, yes, even Ashton Genty, James
Thank
would
you.
absolutely love it. But yes,
Thank you.
we're going to take him at 17. We do not expect any of these guys to be there. The real conversation, Andrew, if you scroll a little bit lower for us, are any of these 1B guys, because a few of you had Jihaad Campbell, had Tyler Warren. I think someone had Kelvin Banks, Walter Nolen in the 1A grouping. Now's the time for you to make your argument. If you feel one of these 1B players should be in the 1A, meaning it's slam dunk, we are taking that guy if he's 17, no debate about it. We're putting him a tier above everyone else in here. Now's the time to make the case.
The only one of these guys that I could see an argument for, and this is an argument that I'm not going to make, is in another year Tyler Warren. But I don't think this year I'm making that argument.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, right? Because if they were in a better situation, right, I would love to have Tyler Warren. Is that what you mean, Jake? Because the roster is not there right now.
Yeah, and it's just I'm not putting him in a different bucket. I mean, obviously, we see where he is in the bucket. He's at the top of 1B. What's the difference between the top of 1B and the bottom of 1A? It's not very significant. But if you're asking me to say that he should be in an entirely different tier, I just think that because of where the Bengals are, despite what Duke Tobin said about them being wide open and not needing starters, they do need starters. And I don't think that gives them the luxury of picking Tyler Warren in like ahead of everybody in this 1B bucket necessarily. Like, I don't know if I have him ahead of everybody in this bucket.
I'm not even sure if he's ahead of Colston Loveland. For the
fair.
Bengals,
There's gonna be teams that have Loveland higher.
Yeah, and so that would be the argument for neither one is 1A. And you put them both 1B and you talk about the stack that way and you approach it that way. I think the 1A is so elite that it makes it tough. But I'm sure there are a couple of you that want to make the case for someone in this 1B group to be 1A. So who
can I go the other way? I know I was just
kick someone off of it.
Yeah, I think Membo should be the top of 1B. For them, I think.
Oh, if Membo's there, are we not taking him?
Yeah, but I think it's the top of 1B. I think that Membo is a different tier of prospect than Hunter, Carter, Graham, Genty, and Will Campbell might be too. Those guys both might be both 1B. Like if we're talking about true blue chippers, those guys aren't top 10 prospects every year. If they're in last year's draft, I'm not sure where they go with all the tackles in last year's first round.
Let me ask you this then, Jake.
100% with Jake on that one too.
Then both of you, I'll ask you this then. If Membo is available or Will Campbell is available, is there anyone on 1B that you would take over them?
Probably Campbell. I would definitely probably take Jihaad Campbell over both of them.
I'm not sure that I am there myself, but I don't see it as a tier difference. Like, I see a huge tier difference between Hunter, Carter, Graham, Genty.
But if you wouldn't take any of the 1B guys over them, we have to draw a line so that
then
we can.
C should be C. This is
Well,
this is not a this is not a blue chip heavy draft, though, is what I'm saying, and we're considering those guys blue chippers.
You can't take every draft. You kind of have to look at every draft a little bit in a vacuum, though. You can't look at each one as compare it to last year. You got to look and see who's available this year.
I'm not comparing it to last year, though. I'm saying there's a difference between Hunter, Carter, Graham, Campbell, Membo.
But we can keep breaking it down to smaller and smaller tiers. But do you want like a 1B? And
this ultimately is inconsequential. I don't think we should spend much time here, but I think that the blue chip tier should be reserved for the true blue chip players, and I think there's like 4 of them at the top of this class.
Sure, I think that we're just kind of talking auto take. Like 1A
is that it's not just.
Matt Minich is about 2 seconds, like 20 seconds different.
It's not just that it's.
Oh,
that's weird. It's not just that you're looking for the blue chip players. Who's a blue chip player? It's who's the best player for you. And when I look at Membo compared to the other tackles in this draft, I don't know how Membo is getting on the field. I don't see him being able to shift inside and play guard successfully, where I could see that definitely with Banks, possibly with Simmons. So I don't think Membo belongs in that category, and I'd take some of these other tackles specifically in the 1B grouping because they're better prospects for the Bengals, assuming, Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims health next year.
Yeah, I think 1A to me is because I get it, Jake. You're saying blue chip. I would just call it auto take. Like if that guy is there at 17, it's an auto take. You don't really think about it. And so that's that's probably why, to me, Membo, you'd probably take him, but maybe not. Maybe to Matt's point, you're going with Kelvin Banks Jr. over Membo. And so I think that's where we're at, is maybe they're not blue chip every year and in that level, but at 17, if Ashton Genty is there, look at me just talking about running backs anytime I can, auto take. Will Campbell, auto take. Like the Bengals are definitely going to take him if he falls there. Where is that line? Is it with Membo or is it after Membo?
Can we defer to Sands and Jared, guys that focus on trenches as much as they do? Would you have any reservations about playing Membo at guard? And we shouldn't spend too much time because we don't expect him there, but would you have an issue with him playing guard?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't have too much of a problem
Duke
with it.
Tobin.
I think this is too much semantics. Those guys are going top 10, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
like
we
I
just
said,
want
I
to
don't think
establish.
I don't really think we should spend much more time here, but I do think that if we're talking about the way the Bengals would do this, they would have Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham all for sure in 1A, probably Genty too, and then I think 1B would start. I don't think they would be as generous as we're being. It doesn't matter at all. Let's move on. But I've been overruled in downgrading Membo. That's fine. I don't care that much. Let's talk about the 1Bs.
Okay, so the next step then is trying to parse and trying to rank these 1B guys a little bit. If there is anyone here that you think is an auto draft, same as what we're calling that blue chip group, that 1A group, some people may say that's Jihaad Campbell. If he's there, I'm taking him. If Tyler Warren's there, I'm taking him. If Colston Loveland's there, I'm taking him. I feel that way about Kelvin Banks. If he's there, I want Kelvin Banks. And maybe that creates a bit of a gap. Some people say that about Walter Nolen as well. But at the same time, we have to rank these guys a little bit here. And we typically, in past years, and this is, I think, a good way to do it, is to start with the top two. And then we can start to cycle them down as we argue through it. Tyler Warren or Jihaad Campbell? Are we always taking Tyler Warren over Jihaad Campbell? Or is anyone here like, give me Jihaad Campbell if it's those two? If we're down to these two guys on the board, are we taking Campbell or are we taking Tyler Warren?
Let's all vote. I'll take Campbell.
I'll take Campbell.
Proud jihadist.
I also would take Campbell. It sounds like Patrick, you got anything? Matt, Jake?
Are we assuming? What are we assuming about health? Are we just assuming we know his health? It's just he'll miss a few weeks and he's gonna be fine in this scenario.
Well, that's the next factor for sure.
It is.
But I just think straight up prospects.
Right. If it's just talent,
yeah.
It's really close for me. I'd probably go Warren, but Campbell would be my next guy. Or now, actually, I would go Campbell. Because I think I actually have Loveland above Warren anyway.
There we go. That's right.
I'm Warren because I think Warren changes your team, makes a bigger impact than overall.
Jake?
My take is pretty irrelevant here. That's fine. Just move on. I don't have a strong take here. We've built consensus. Consensus is built. We can move Campbell up, move Tyler Warren down, and keep going.
Well, but then the health factor is there, and we didn't.
We should mention it. Yeah.
And so that's it. Is establishing. Yeah. If everything's rosy, Campbell maybe at the top of 1B and is ahead of Warren.
But this is also information we don't have that the Bengals do have. Like they will have a medical grade on all these guys.
For sure.
So what are we doing here? Are we saying like if medical grade is F, then X? If medical grade is B, then Y? Like, are we trying to say like if then?
So we answered this last year too when we had Mims. We talked about this. Like, he missed a lot of time. What are they going to say about medicals? We put if they're at this point of ranking him in this grouping, it means the medical staff is giving him a pass. Sure, he may miss some time his rookie year, but overall they're giving him a pass and we're grading him from here.
Yeah. And I think that's
I think I am on Warren ahead of Campbell. Even then, I think I'm on Warren. I think I'm with Matt in the minority.
If there was no medical with Campbell, he would be in my 1A pretty easy.
He'd go top 10, I think, top 12, if not.
And that's also true about Josh Simmons, but we'll get there.
Look at you going out of your way to mention O lineman. All right, so if he gets that check,
I don't want to kill, but I feel like people talk way too much about Campbell as like a pass rusher, like he's Micah Parsons or something like that. I feel like
agreed.
Like
don't do it.
He's a good linebacker, but I don't know where that really falls
because he was a 5-star.
I don't think he was changing it.
It's because he was a 5-star recruit, I think, at defensive end, but it has not translated. If you watch him against Will Campbell, he does not look like a high-end pass rusher. Looks like a great guy that can beat backs and blitz and get matched up
Good
that
blitzer.
way. But he is not a guy that you're going to line up at edge instead of Trey Hendrickson or Myles Murphy and go like, yeah, you're going to give real juice against, I don't know, Ronnie Stanley. It's like, no, not really.
Andrew, can you swap Warren and Campbell then so we can talk
and
about
that's where it comes to me is that how much value is there.
So we can
Yeah,
talk about
running back in 1A.
Warren and
Am I up
Loveland
again? My
a
screen
little
everybody else?
bit.
Sorry.
You're okay. Your point's
Yeah,
there.
it's a little off. It's the Tyler Booker internet where it's just not testing great, but it's all right.
So we're swapping them.
We're swapping them for now, and we've done this before in past years. We will swap guys. We'll think about it and talk about it, and we'll end up coming to an idea as we grow through it. Because each swap creates a new set of conversation. Because I think the Bengals even deal with this. There's been tight ends they have liked, but does it mean they're drafting them over Kelvin Banks, right? Which is our next scenario here. We may like Tyler Warren and Colston Love, and I think both would be fun to have on this offense, right? That'd be come cover us if you draft either one. But are you drafting them over a guy like Kelvin Banks? Anyone feel differently or want to put Banks above these guys?
Banks.
Yeah, I want to put Banks above these guys.
I want to hear from Mike because Mike is a Kelvin Banks dissenter.
Yes.
I am not the biggest fan. He reminds me a lot of Evan Neal, to be honest, the way he falls down constantly throughout the run game. I don't think he expands his range all that well in pass protection. Something that gets mitigated when you get moved to guard. I don't think you're drafting Kelvin Banks to be a permanent guard. I think you're hoping that he would start at guard in this scenario and then move to tackle. I don't know. Like, there's just – I didn't love Evan Neal coming out for this. It's just when you watch a guy, he's got balance issues. It looks like – yeah, he tested like a good athlete. Then he gets on the field. It's like he could be good in open space, but I had issues watching him. Just like if it feels like he doesn't make anything look easy. Like you watch some of these high end athletes like Membu, and you watch Josh Simmons and Will Campbell, and you're like, oh, they make moving look easy. And sometimes Banks, he makes moving look a little hard. And also, how many edge guys? Mykel Williams had a great game against him. Mykel Williams isn't in the 1B tier. He's out of all the guys. And the Texas offense, also, that's the baby offense for offensive linemen. That's so many RPOs, so many screens. It's like he's not really pass setting. So personally, my Kelvin Banks take is I probably wouldn't take that guy over a lot of these players. But then if I look at the Bengals, and we're going to have to get there some other players too, they value size. They value a player that kind of looks like Kelvin Banks.
Age, pedigree, 5-star recruit.
So despite my opinions about Kelvin Banks being, I think he's a second-round guy, I think the Bengals would view him as a guy that they want to take at 17.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
We do also have to wait. They have a new O-line coach, so we don't necessarily know that they're going to be looking for the same things that they historically have. And just to back up on Mike's point, I'm not an O-line expert. I never claimed to be, but I also like Simmons' tape. If we're talking with Campbell, if we're assuming health, I like Simmons better than Banks. I might have Simmons up there with Campbell and Membu.
I do.
If we're talking just assuming he's healthy. So I can see either way with Simmons or Banks moving up or down.
And by the way, if anyone's just joining us on the live stream, we are setting the Bengals board. This is basically the exercise the front office is doing this week ahead of the NFL draft, less than 72 hours away. We're doing the same thing. And so this is, as we discuss it, we're sharing our opinions. But as we set this is what we think the Bengals board will look like. So I just wanted to reset everyone and let everyone know what we're doing here, what the exercise is. And yeah, Kelvin Banks Jr., I'm not sure he even makes it to 17, fellas, to be honest with you. I'm kind of skeptical that that'll happen. If he does, I think he will be pretty high on their board.
I agree. And I think that's the thing here is we got to remember it's for the Bengals here. What do they typically draft? What do they typically like? They've had different coaches. They've had different O-line coaches. They've drafted the way they draft for the most part. And I think a young guy, 5-star recruit that has played a lot of football in big-time games from a big-time program would be high on their board. I think if you're sitting there and Loveland and Banks are both there, I bet the Bengals think Banks. And I think we should have Banks at least above Loveland. And I think you can put him over Tyler Warren.
I think the Bengals have Loveland over Warren. I would be pretty confident because I just think they value the dynamic ability from a tight end in the passing game. And I think they'll say he's more dynamic, more fluid as a route runner, and we'll bring more. Obviously, Warren is more complete.
From a
And
data
a
perspective,
better ball.
Loveland is exactly what they've always drafted at tight end.
Yeah, there you go. And that's me not even looking at the data. What data? So
After watching these guys for so long,
dude,
like,
I know
Bengals tight end.
It's just fun. I mean,
He gets nothing after the catch. Perfect.
You heard it here first. Loveland, the next true sample.
I put a
Jeez, you're
poll
killing
with
us here.
Loveland versus Banks in the live chat for anyone interested. It looks like we've already got 52 and climbing up on vote count. So
Let's simplify this. Do we really believe the Bengals are drafting a tight end over any of the guys in this tier?
Yes.
Okay, which guys?
Will Johnson, Mike Green.
All right.
And that's going to be a take for some.
over Amenwari.
Yeah, I would say Amenwari.
I think they'd love him. I think they take him in Worry.
Yeah, I think Amenwari.
I take him in Amenwari over him.
So I think we can
honestly, maybe Derek Harmon.
Right.
You never know. Would not shock me.
So what if we do? I'm going to take control of the board here, Andrew, remotely through the old sheet here. So what if we just take these two columns here, and let's defer talking about tight end for a little bit, and we'll do something like this and talk about Kelvin Banks, Walter Nolen, Josh Simmons for the next handful of guys.
Okay, yeah. So we just moved the tight ends down and now focus the conversation on how would we rank Kelvin Banks, Walter Nolen, Josh Simmons for the Bengals?
Because I don't even know. I'm not even so sure the Bengals would draft a tight end over the guys we have remaining below them. But for now, we can come back to that later because there's arguments there.
For sure. I think Nolen maybe at the top of this list for the Bengals. They're really looking for, they want that interior pass rush. The reason why they signed Sheldon Rankins is for that. And they haven't addressed it since. So they value it. And I think that that's all part of their plan is, all right, we tried to pay it in free agency. It didn't work. We're going to get it here in the draft. So I think Walter Nolen, if he's not above Campbell, he might be slightly above Banks. I think that they're going to value him that much.
I would think Nolen could very well be ahead of Campbell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to say that too when it got to me, as I feel like we'd be foolish to not have Nolen as high as we can, as if he's not target one.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, if we're talking interior pass rush, though, there's someone in 1B who's arguably as good, if not better, than Nolen.
Harmon is as a pass rusher. He is.
Right. I'd say Nolan's a more complete player. He's a lot better against the run and a much better tackler right now. But they're just trying to get pass rush, Harmon's the better player at the moment.
Yeah, Duke Tobin was asked about that in his press conference today, coincidentally. Said his defensive tackles do need to defend the run. That's not a concern for me with Harmon. He's big enough. He can handle that stuff. It's just the tackling issue for Harmon. The other thing with Harmon that makes it harder is that there are sure a lot of medical whistles being blown today.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Harmon.
Which
that happens on the week of the draft.
3 straight years.
When that happens on the week of the draft, though, there's usually something there. It could be Lion season, but probably there's something their teams are worried about.
Yeah, Lion season, so the Ravens and Bills and Chiefs draft him.
It could be that simple.
Matt, you got to take. I know you're delayed, so I want to give you an opportunity to talk.
My consumers. Yeah, sorry about that. I came back in. I don't know why it's just still off, but my thing with Harmon is I when he's making plays, he's shooting gaps to me. I don't really he's moving around. He's shooting gaps. I'm not really seeing him engaging and getting off blocks or really forcing the pocket, to collapse on itself. So I don't know that he is a great Al Golden fit. I think Warren works a little better with what Al Golden's talked about wanting out of the line. Out of the defensive line. And having a guy that's going to play their role and not prevent things. Really allow linebackers to make a lot of plays. I think Harmon is. I think he wins by shooting gaps, which is fine. But I don't think it's what they're looking for now.
So does anyone disagree that Nolen should probably be number one of this 1B grouping?
No.
We're worried about the Campbell medical flags. There's also the off-field flags with Nolen, though, right? Like,
Yep.
which of those really take precedent? Because I think they probably view Nolen as their number one, but I was just thinking of that where we're talking about moving Campbell down for a possible medical, and we're not going to just ignore the Nolen smoke either, right?
I think that the difference is that they had the 30 with Nolen, right? Which is probably vetting that out a little bit more, but it hasn't. There's been no redirection of steam as far as I can tell. That was say after the combine meeting, after the 30 visit, they're like, the league is soured on Nolen. We haven't really heard that. There's still some questions out there for sure, and I think Paul Dehner's voiced this a lot. Like he talking to Dave Brugler keeps bringing up like they want to hear that he loves football. They want to hear it from him, kind of thing. And so maybe there is something there. Maybe that is the pump and the brakes that we should be paying more attention to. That's the only thing in my mind that we would have to weigh in terms of a flag. But I mean, all these guys in this group have something, and that's something we've been talking about for weeks too.
And that's why they're in the 1B grouping, right? Either they're currently injured, they have injury risks or flags, they have character questions, whether that's like, on field or love of the game or arguing with coaches in terms of Walter Nolen or Mike Green with past issues that from high school and early college days. This isn't a clean grouping, and that's why you've heard national draft analysts say Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren are in that top 10 group for every team because they're clean. And that's why, we have to argue and debate some of these guys. I think if, again, similar with injuries, if you're putting them in the 1B to even start this, it means backgrounds are good enough for us to go forward with. If we're going to play in that sandbox and say, we really can't answer these questions, we do not have that ability here. We would have somebody else that has done the background checks, or if we met these guys throughout the process, which most of us would have if we're sitting in these seats and we brought in Walter Nolen on a 30 visit plus a combine meeting, right? I think it was both of those.
Yep.
We would be in the situation where we feel either comfortable or not. So since we're putting them in this group to start with, I think we should say for now, pass it on and say, put them in that one slot for the 1B group. You're unmuted, Jake, if you're saying something.
I see that. I said we have these lovely red columns here, so let's just start taking some notes.
You can do that. That's what it's for, actually. I was trying to think of a way we could do a sub board because that's how teams would do it. Say someone like Jermaine Burton last year had a fringe first round grade for you, and I think the Bengals were really high on Jermaine Burton. He would go on a sub board. So you're going to draft all these guys. Then you get there in the third round, you look up and you go, there's someone still up there with our first, second round grade on him, that Jermaine Burton. Do we want to take him now? And, so at some point the value meets the concern or the risk.
I'm not hearing any opposition, so I move Walter Nolen ahead of Jihaad Campbell.
I'm with it.
What about Banks Campbell? Did we already talk about this? I don't think
we have not. We should specify this one.
Yep.
I still think Simmons should be probably ahead of Nolen, in my opinion.
Josh Simmons.
Ahead of Nolen. Why do you think the Bengals would draft Josh Simmons ahead of
Because
Walter
his
Nolen?
tape says he's a top 10 player. And I mean, he definitely had the best film of any tackle prospect. And I don't think he's one of the few people where I think he moves inside and there's not going to be much drop off in his game as long as he's healthy.
And
He was a guard.
Yeah, he was a
High
guard
school.
at San Diego.
High school.
Yeah, okay.
High school. He was
Did
a
the
high school
Bengals
4-star.
not have a local with him? Did I make that up? Because I don't see it in our sheet. So I assume that means
No, I don't think they did. I was waiting on that to happen.
Yeah. Why
And
wouldn't
it
they?
didn't. There are reports that the knee, everything's going well as he comes back.
Now, the Bengals, of course, have great contacts at Ohio State. And Duke
Sure.
Tobin was at that pro day. That's the one he goes to, one of the ones he goes to every year. So they could have that information. I would assume, though, if the Bengals were interested in drafting Josh Simmons, they would have wanted to look at that knee in person. And maybe we just didn't hear about it. Maybe it happened and it didn't get reported.
And they could have they just did at the combine and were comfortable with it. Could be that.
Could be.
We also only got 17 of the 30 visits. So there is some. Last year we're at 24. So that 7 number could be influencing us a little bit here.
And I really don't know why, to Jake's point, they wouldn't. Because there's a lot to like. It's a local anyway. And so it wouldn't even count against the 30. And so maybe it just.
Only reason I could see is that he was busy with a lot of teams that wanted to see him, right?
Yeah.
And
Maybe.
it didn't work out. Maybe the feeling is he's going to go top 12 or 13, and you're not going to get that chance anyway. We're not going to overdo it here.
He would also be
will-
the oldest Bengals pick in the first round in how
Right.
long?
Since Joe Burrow, but other than that, skill and non-quarterback, it's all 21-year-olds. Some, just it would be William Jackson would be the last one, I think.
It's a pretty long time.
I will say when you look at it, and I could totally see the Bengals thinking this way because they don't prioritize guard, is looking at Josh and being like, oh yeah, perfect guard for a couple of years. And then he does kick out the tackle. I hate that because if he's really good at guard, I would just leave him at guard. Whoever they draft, whether it's Kelvin or Banks or Simmons or whoever. But yeah, I think they could certainly view it that way. And there's reason to believe he would be the top. I mean, you guys think he's, if healthy, the top tackle in this class? Potentially in
if
that
he
one
plays the
group?
full season, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
And
a
so
top
the Bengals
5
view him
pick.
that way.
Yeah.
Top 5. Okay. So
I
he
think-
goes
yeah.
to the Patriots at 4 then. They need tackle help. So you're saying he's off the board at 4.
Yeah.
No, if he was fully healthy, played the whole year at that same level, including probably through the playoffs, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's the other part of it, right? We always say this guy next year is going to be a top 10 pick if he plays at that level or takes another step. Simmons, I liked him. I'm not as high like you guys. Top 5. I'm thinking top 12, even if healthy. I thought it was good. But the way you said it made Kelvin Banks everything look hard. I thought Simmons made things look too easy at times, and I wanted more passion, aggression. Wanted him to fight with guys a little bit more. I wanted him to get into some battles, but he just would beat guys being smoother, more athletic, more
He
patient.
was smoking
which is great.
cigarettes while beating guys.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, this is nothing. This is nothing at all.
That kind of
I was
sounds like
upset-
their type. to me.
I mean,
like,
I'd say
I
we
was
can,
upset.
do
The
something.
Marshall game, I wish Mike Green would have rushed against him. I know Green mostly rushes over right tackle in the first place, but I'm like, man, that would have been nice to see because that would clear your mind on like both of those guys.
What happened to him in the Oregon game? Did you guys see that one where he played only 23 snaps and he got hurt? Because that would have been the only other defensive line here that has talent on it that he played against this year that I recognize. Somebody pointed that out in the chat as well. And what happened to him in that game before he got hurt?
It was that Oregon rotates a lot of. They were rotating a lot of young edge players. Jordan
Birch was
Birch
out.
didn't. Yeah, he didn't play in
Okay.
that game, so it wasn't the top competition from Oregon.
So we
That's
got
right, I
no
remember that game,
competition for Josh Simmons this year.
Yeah,
That makes it
Essentially.
tough too. But that's also true for like every single edge rusher in this class. Every time I looked at who the edge rushers actually played this year, there were like 0 draftable tackles.
That's
on the
why
list.
there's a highlight clip of everyone beating Will Campbell one time in the game. And everyone's like, yeah, there's the clip. And it's like, okay, well, he's the only guy who went against good rushers all year.
Campbell's also the guy. That offense, they make him drop back like 30 times a game and just pass protect. That is, if Banks was playing on baby mode, that was like he's playing
NFL mode.
graduate school. Well,
Yeah.
not yet NFL just because of the athletes, but graduate school for college.
I don't
I
think
don't,
it's crazy
I
for
don't
us
feel
just
like we
put
have consensus though.
both tackles over Campbell, but in any order.
I
at
agree
least
with
put
that.
Simmons over Banks. Just make me happy.
Well, but
Even though I'm the main dissent on Banks, I think
hold
he
on,
fits what
let's-
the Bengals like.
All right. Yeah. All right, let's talk about that now because it is the Bengals board. That's what we're doing. We'll reset it again here because I just saw someone say these guys are talking about tight ends. Well, we're setting the Bengals board. So yeah, they're
let's
talking about tight
reestablish
ends.
that because I did have a few comments. Like some people are even asking about 1A. They think they missed it, but that's kind of not what we're doing here. So
No,
I do wanna
what
kind of
1A is
reestablish
long
that.
gone. We're basically setting
Right.
the Bengals board for pick 17. Ideally, one of these 1B players, multiple 1B players will be there.
There's
at 17
16
when the
guys
Bengals
here
are-
to end 1B.
Yeah. So ideally, multiple guys that we're looking at right here, from Walter Nolen down to Derek Harmon, are available for the Bengals. Maybe 5 of them are available. Would be great. We'll get into 1C and work our way down. All right. So Josh Simmons versus Kelvin Banks. How do we think the Bengals have these guys stacked? We have the injury with Simmons. You have the projection for both of them, less Simmons, but projection for both of them when it comes to playing guard. How do we feel? Let's take a vote. Obviously,
I'm
we
cool
know
with
Derek
Banks
Simmons.
because that makes more. I was, you get into evaluation mode. I'm like, this is
No
my
doubt.
guy. So
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
just
yeah.
making the argument for Simmons, but I totally get the argument for Banks being ranked over him, especially with the age and what they prefer. So I'm cool with that.
I actually think Banks would make a hell of a guard because he plays with such leverage. He will go helmet to helmet with guys and blow through their chest. That Michigan game to me, where he's actually, because they're sliding their protection and he's going against Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham, I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what a guard would look like. Yeah, he falls on the ground a bunch. He was 20 years old in that tape, like a mid 20-year-old. He's gonna get better, I think, in a lot of ways. I think the Bengals would value Kelvin Banks a lot and say, like, we need a guard. Like, Banks might be the first guy that actually plays guard because Membo and Campbell get drafted too high. Simmons, if he goes top 13, gets drafted too high, he's not playing guard. You get to 17 and you draft Kelvin Banks and you play him at guard, he may stick at guard in his entire career and might be really, really good there.
I moved Kelvin Banks up.
I've evaluated Banks as a guard this whole time, so I'm right there with you, Joe.
He's got a big, wide rear. That's a guard.
Yeah, basically people move.
Oh, he looks like a guard.
Is there anyone else?
I would put Banks above Simmons for the Bengals. I would just also be going like, I wouldn't do that personally, but I know what they're doing.
Got it.
Is there anyone else we think here that the Bengals would draft ahead of Jihaad Campbell? Or are we moving on to this next group of guys here from Josh Simmons on?
I think they put Simmons above Campbell.
Go on.
It's just the value of him possibly being, a franchise left tackle with Orlando Brown getting older and his contract will run out with a couple years left on Simmons. So I think that, and then he can also shore up the offensive line. That they didn't really address that in free agency. So I think that just makes more sense for them than Campbell.
Positional value too. The Bengals tend to draft linemen. I know it's been 10 years since we've been banging our head on the wall, but they do draft linemen with premium picks. And I think if it was a linebacker versus a guard left tackle of the future, they take the left tackle.
And since Keith Rivers, linebackers have typically been a late day 2, day 3 priority for the Bengals, right? They don't draft linebackers early very often, except for that one year we were talking about the Devons.
And they didn't. They took an offensive tackle over him.
Well, Bush was gone. They're both gone.
They were gone.
They would have taken Jonah.
But, they were on Jonah and then Chris Lindstrom. So, that tells you where they were headed. I know. Close, so close. We've got so many stories of them being Frank Ragnow or Billy Price. So close. We were so close to getting an elite offensive line. So I do think I'd have
Simmons.
Let's not
compare Jonah to anyway.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. No, Chris Lindstrom is what I'm saying. If they had a Lindstrom and then ended up with Ragnow. Anyway.
All right, so Simmons ahead of Campbell.
I think
Super Bowl is what you're
Simmons
saying?
ahead of Campbell.
And then we have this.
Here's where we talked about the injury, though, as well. Where how do we evaluate it? Well, both guys are currently injured. So, one doesn't get a point over the other here. I think they go O-line over linebacker.
O-line over linebacker. And then there's this group of positional value questions because we know that the Bengals care about this to some degree. We've seen them pass on tight ends for consecutive years. And so we have Jihaad Campbell, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, and then a group of guys that on the defensive side of the ball could have arguments that their positions are more important, and Will Johnson, Mike Green, and Derek Harmon. And then I think this is perhaps premature, so shut me down on this if you want, but for the Bengals, should Shamar Stewart, Mykel Williams.
We will get to that for sure.
Yeah.
I say the next step for us is to take Will Johnson, Mike Green, Nick Immanwori, Derek Harmon, and say, are there any of these guys we think the Bengals would take over a tight end? Let's say we're still sitting there in Colston Loveland, because it's easier to visualize Colston Loveland being there, right? Colston Loveland or Mike Green, Colston Loveland or Nick Immanwori, Colston Loveland or Derek Harmon. Would the Bengals go tight end or would they go Mike Green?
And there's smoke today for everyone that missed it. And James, you got this on your site. Good work. BengalsTalk.com. Getting this one from Ben Albright and McShay. That the Bengals are one of the teams perhaps more comfortable with Mike Green that could be picking him in the middle of the first round.
I'd be surprised if they take him at 17. I not even because of the off the field, even though that is a flag and we don't know it. And he addressed that at the combine. But even if you take that out, do they think he can be more than a situational guy and hold up and be the run defender that they want on the edge, which they do value that a ton?
Go on, Mike. Good run defender.
Go on, Mike.
Well, no. So Mike Green doesn't really fit what the Bengals typically look at in their first round edges, but He did weigh in at 253, which is just 2 pounds below. Jordan Willis, who was the lightest defensive end they've ever taken with a premium pick. So
Premium pick.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know,
man.
Third round's premium.
yeah, premium-ish. You know.
Yeah.
What's in between
stretching.
on the gas pump? What's on the gas pump? Premium, unleaded. He was in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but like they have taken a guy around that before. I think the issue is obviously the off field, although they have also ignored that before, like with Jackson Carman with a very similar issue. This is small school. Small school edge, and he would
that might be the biggest thing.
An outlier in terms of weight, although it is better than you might think. Like it's better than James Pierce, and that's probably why Pierce isn't here in 1B. Pierce came in lighter than that. But Green, I think he had the weight to stick in this 1B tier, but I kind of reject a little bit of like the idea that the Bengals are going to draft him for sure at 17 if he's there ahead of a lot of these guys.
Can I add one thing? Yeah, Matt, I just got one point. From what I remember of the Myles Murphy draft, the next two guys on their board was Brian Brzee and Nolan Smith. So that's late first. Maybe that's different. Nolan Smith played at Georgia. Nolan Smith was absolute nut against the run. Those things value and go into the evaluation. So, that's why I'm thinking maybe they would take Green because we worry about the size so much. But the big school may be the biggest difference there. Matt, what do you got?
Nolan Smith also undersized. That's an interesting comment for that too. But like Green might not measurably fit into what they do, but when you watch his film, he looks like the kind of guy that they value. Like he goes, like he's a hustler. He's running things down from the backside, and just that energy that he brings, like that screams the kind of guy that they're looking for.
I agree. I also think though, would they take? We can kind of look at these four and say, would they take Mike Green or would they take Derek Harmon? I think it's easier for us to say they would take Derek Harmon before they got to Mike Green.
I think they would take Harmon over Green. Yes,
yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Another one I have Green higher in terms of film, but I think the Bengals would have Harmon higher.
Agreed.
This is rough. So does anyone disagree with this order? Does anyone think Green? Well, okay, let's talk about Green and Memori because I think Harmon is probably the top of this group at the bottom four and 1B. Anybody dissenting? Looking. Nobody's dissenting. What about Memori Green? Because Matt might have had something. Matt, go ahead.
But hey, this will lead into what you're talking about because Memori is the guy that I would talk about even pushing up into that Campbell range, because I think he does more to change your defense than just about anybody on this board. Just he's a different type of player, and I think that especially with not knowing necessarily Trey Hendrickson's future, this defense doesn't have a personality. Like they don't have anybody who's. I mean, honestly, in the Super Bowl run, it was Von Bell, it was Jermaine Pratt. Like those were the real passion fire guys, and the guy that kind of gave you a personality, even though they weren't their necessarily best players. I think he's a guy that maybe gives you a bit of an identity on defense, even though he's not at the most valued necessarily position. And again, with the battle situation, with Battle already being there, maybe he's not the ideal guy that you want from a safety, but I think he can change you and give you that type of identity.
Yeah, I think Jihaad Campbell and Nick Emmanwori, if you take either one of them for different reasons, not necessarily the same, they're identity picks where it's like, all right, we're going to bring this guy in. He's going to help us in a bunch of different ways, be a playmaker, and be someone that we can be a cornerstone of the new look Al Golden Bengals. And I think vision with Emmanwori is huge. He's a super versatile 6'3", 220-pound safety. And we know the front office will really value versatility. Now, is Al Golden saying this is the type of guy that is going to work in our defense, and is there alignment there? I think that's the question. And that's something that I guess we should probably discuss right now.
Can I say with the news today that it's I think it was Kelsey Conway saying that Josh Newton would play the slot corner, be the one to replace Mike Hilton. made me a little more open to Nick Imanwari. If you haven't watched Imanwari, he covers the slot a ton for South Carolina, and I thought he did a hell of a job despite being 220 pounds. Didn't do his agilities either at the combine. So you see a little bit of stiffness in him, but at the same time, I thought mentally he understood what routes were coming. He understood route combos. Matt, you coach DBs, have talked DBs forever. Do you feel the same way like this? I think people think Cam Chancellor, and I don't think that. I think he's Kyle Hamilton if he hits his peak, which would be an asset to this defense.
A huge asset.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a little bit of both. You know, I think you can do a ton of stuff with him, and I know he played a lot in the box and didn't play a lot in the deep field zone, but I think he can do that stuff too. Like from what we've seen of him doing it, and like put on top of that, you know, the combine performance, like we know he can physically do it. I don't think there's any reason to believe he can't be this ultimate movable piece. Again, maybe doesn't fit great with battle, but you still have Geno Stone there, and so you've got those three guys that you can move around. That give you the ability to be creative with Imanwari and again give yourself, you know, a real identity defensively.
Do we want to split, or this might go into it? Sands and Pat looked like you want to say something. Anyone want to put Imanwari over Harmon? Because even though saying that about Imanwari, I don't know that they would take him over Harmon, even though I feel like they would like Imanwari a ton with the way their defense is right now and needing some identity. I still think Harmon should be above him.
I wonder if we are a little overconfident in what we think they like at safety or what we think they're looking for at safety with Al Golden taking over and thinking a lot about what they've done in the past versus what we would expect the defense to look like with Al Golden running it.
I think the issue with Imanwari is, despite being like that insane RAS athlete, you mentioned it, he didn't do the agility. So when you watch him, that's the issue with him moving around is stumbling, stiff, and taking some extra steps. So I don't know if they're going to view him as the perfect athlete. And I've just sometimes that archetype scares me. Just like the freak, big safety that could play linebacker if he wants. It's like Isaiah Simmons, Obi Melifonwu, where it's like, imagine what you could do with this guy. And then Jeremy Chin, sure. Chin at least got a second contract. I don't know if. Do you guys think he's for sure? The Bengals would take Imanwari over Starks even.
We'll get to that. I think Starks, he ended up in 1C for us here. And maybe we're at that point where we need to start talking about some of these 1C guys elevating into 1B if there's arguments for them, which would maybe help break up this Final Four for us.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just talking about safety for a second, I think it's also worth mentioning, you know, obviously you got to try to make this, you know, as is, but I think it's worth mentioning how day two at the position looks. I think it's a pretty strong safety group in day two. You're looking at guys like Makuba, Winston, Watts, and then there's, you know, a few other guys. I think that if they really like some of those guys, like Watts obviously is the golden connection. They've shown interest in Winston and Makuba. So I think that they may, you know, be more interested in waiting on safety because of the value of the guys on day two.
I think they'd love Watts in round two. I think that is like ideal for them. When you watch the Notre Dame defense, if you study it, like he is so integral to how they played throughout the year. I loved him. He's my safety one, but I'm far descent on that.
You want to put him in 1B, Sands?
Yeah.
No, I don't think.
I got Imanwari one, but I've got Watts over Starks.
Do you? Okay. Well, yeah. Let's go into 1C a little bit because I do think it'll break it up.
What happened to 1C here? We have had a lot of people question about Starks, so it's good that we're getting on that. Oh, almost as much as people have commented or questioned on the shirt I'm wearing. Starks is up there.
Yeah, I think just looking at those guys, those top 3 1C guys, Starks, Stewart, and Williams, and that's Duke Tobin calling. I think that
sorry, I was on call.
You're good. I would be surprised if Stewart didn't sneak his way into 1B for the Bengals.
I think Stewart is comfortable. I think Stewart's above the tight ends in 1B.
Yeah.
For the Bengals, I think he's comfortably above the tight ends, maybe above Campbell.
It scares the shit out of me.
Like, do we think there's a chance he's the top of 1B for them? There's a chance
I think that there's a very good chance he's the top.
He is so
he might be like 6th on their board.
If you scroll up, Andrew, like who's talking me out of putting Shamar Stewart in that spot?
Well,
I'm not.
I think Nolen could be really high on their board as well. So I think
I
that
don't
is a
think he's that
discussion.
high.
I think. Oh, it's close. It's close.
That's
I
good
know
to
they.
me.
I will say this. I know they really like Stewart.
Yeah.
So
It seems like he's going to go top 15.
That's not just projection. That's they do. So, yeah.
And when
Get
you
ready,
say
He's such a
Joe.
Bengals. He's
is
such a
this the time to
Bengals.
get it out.
Such a Bengals edge. And oh man,
Like I would be stunned if they didn't have him well ahead. Let's just use the edges, right? Like clearly James Pierce Jr. hasn't even come up yet, but a lot of people like him. I think Stewart's well ahead of Pierce for them, and I think well ahead of Mike Green for them, and probably he really might be up there. I think it might be him or Nolen type status from a defensive line perspective if we just go broad and add the tackles and edges together.
And while we're doing this, if they like Shamar Stewart, I'm going to guess they like Mykel Williams.
Sure.
Mykel didn't test as well though. He didn't test as freaky.
He didn't finish his testing, right?
Neither
Got
guy
locked
finished
up by a
it.
bunch of freshmen in the playoffs.
But not Kelvin Banks.
And honestly, the proponents of Shamar Stewart would tell you to go watch who opposing offensive coordinators paid attention to for Texas A&M, because people talk about Nick Skirton a lot, right? And Skirton being maybe the he's more productive. Is that the guy that you want from the A&M? And then there are those out there that propel the argument that, well, Stewart was getting all the extra attention. He was getting all the chips, all the tight end help, all the running back help, and Skirton's just over there taking his one-on-ones on the other side and benefiting from being on the same team as Shamar Stewart. Now, that is not to absolve his lack of production, obviously. But if we think about the Bengals as a team that does care about traits and is thinking about the film much more than they're thinking about any of the production analytics that we think about. Mm-hmm. They're aware of them, some of them. I don't even know about all of them. Maybe they know all of them by now, but they're not using them with the kind of weight that we're using them in the sheet, for example, right? So, given all of that, Shamar Stewart sure does sound like a player they would like. What about age? Is he young? That's
21. He's 21 and a half. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he checks everything.
Yeah.
He and Mykel would fit that.
Are they the same guy though?
No.
Is Mykel that traitsy? Let's let Matt talk real quick.
Not nearly as traitsy.
Yeah. I just want to say I feel like all the Texas A&M guys, they don't have the production you expect them to. And even if you go back before Walter Nolen transferred, they're like, well, he didn't produce when he was at Texas A&M. So I feel like it's something about like they just have so many guys there, or something they're doing schematically. But like those guys just like, I think we kind of have to put an asterisk on it because it seems to be happening with all of them.
Mm-hmm. It was a heavy rotation, not like Tennessee, but it was a pretty heavy swapping in and out, especially on the edges.
And if I can answer,
yeah,
and Scroton, like he or Scroton, however you say it, like he took a step back from where he was doing at Purdue as well. Flip that one up, but he took a step back from what he was doing at Purdue before he transferred as well. I could see them favoring him for the fact that he's been a Big Ten guy and been in the cold and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know. Overall, you look at those guys and there's something a little funky there.
So Mykel versus Shamar. Mykel is more natural. He understands what's going on around him. He plays the run better with better length and understanding and positioning. I think he knows where the ball is flowing. I think he knows how they're attacking him. I think he is a much better football player than Shamar Stewart is. Definitely a bull in a china shop type athlete where he's just trying to run through people consistently. I did not like, I mean, it's our own evaluations here. We're trying to figure out the Bengals. I think if the Bengals like Stewart, they would also like Mykel Williams and they've drafted guys who didn't test and didn't test fully. They've done it consistently. That does not scare them away when they think a guy is a top 12 or so prospect and he's still available at 17. If it happens, it sounds like Mykel's going to go top 10. But I think they would have him high on their board.
Yeah. I all right. So let's do this. Do we think Williams or Stewart between those two? I think they would have Stewart a tick higher.
Stewart.
Yeah.
But they're both clearly going to be 1B guys. So just a reminder for everyone in chat who's yelling at us about, where the players are and everything. We are trying to project what we think the Bengals will do. Just a reminder. This is nobody's personal opinion.
Board.
This is
we started with our opinion
predict.
of what we think they'll do. Now we're coming together to do it.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I didn't start there because I botched the assignment. But
I
that's
did
okay.
too. I'll
Yeah.
be honest.
We do this
fair.
every year.
Every
Every
year.
year we forget.
It's
By the
part
way,
of what helps,
for-
I think.
Yeah, for the 700 plus watching right now, we've done this the past 2 years, and we set the Bengals draft board. So this is what we think the Bengals draft board is going to look like. And Myles Murphy nailed that 2 years ago. Last year, Amarius Mims. We're trying to do that now. It takes time. These are the conversations that the Bengals are having in their front office as they put their buckets together and their tier list together. I agree. I think Shamar Stewart could lead 1B. Is Mykel Williams ahead of Walter Nolen? I would put Nolen ahead of Mykel Williams.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I
agree with you, James.
Agreed.
I'm just
Agree. Yeah, that's a good one.
all right.
mean-
So now Mykel Williams or Kelvin Banks, and this
Correct.
is where I think it gets interesting.
Williams probably over Banks.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think I'm agreeing with Patrick here.
Michael being
So,
one
okay,
of the youngest
let's-
guys in this class too, I think really helps him for the Bengals' eyes here.
Is there anything on tape that would make the Bengals think Mykel Williams can rush a passer? Like,
Mykel
Yeah,
Williams
maybe
I don't
beat
think
Kelvin Banks
Yeah, he
Hold on.
did.
up and down the field when Georgia played Texas.
but like think about the Myles Murphy pick. Like Myles Murphy
Couldn't
when
rush
he-
the passer.
but
They didn't care.
But he had a get off.
Mhm.
Like he showed a trait.
Mykel doesn't have that get off.
No.
What does Mykel have?
And
as
a lot of
passer?
defensive line coaches, your number
Power.
one thing they look for is the get off, and then also size, at least for the Bengals. But a lot of defensive line coaches like, you have a get off like that, we'll teach you the rest. And that's the issue with Stewart versus Mykel. And now further here is that Mykel's get off is solid, but Stewart's looks special for his size.
Mhm.
And
But
Mykel,
that is why we
if
have
he
Stewart.
becomes a good pass rusher, I think it's because he kicks inside and wins inside there.
Mhm.
And to be clear, someone said to look at the 2023 tape for Mykel. I did. It's not any better.
It's not. I
It's
agree.
not any better at all.
It's not.
He does not look more athletic. He's not getting off of the line better. He's slow. He's smart, but I don't think he has a go-to move or go-to athleticism. I don't see a winning trait, but I think the Bengals will like him.
Disciplined and strong. That'll get you drafted.
And
Big
they're
program, too.
bound.
That plays
Elite
for them.
program. Mm-hmm.
All right. So Kelvin Banks Jr. ahead of Mykel. What about Simmons and Jihaad Campbell?
Hold on. Did we reach that conclusion? I don't know if we did.
I felt like we did.
I don't know that we have
think-
right now because I think we can knock potentially Mike Green and Will Johnson out of the 1B group. By the way, everyone talked and kind of felt of, the way we talked about the players above that with Nicky Manwari and Derek Harmon, which can allow us to maybe slot in Malachi Starks. Well, I think the Bengals will be high on Starks.
Yeah. We can do that. And because, I think that I still don't think 1B is complete.
It's not. That's what I mean. I want to make sure we get the right guys in there first because Jalen Walker's down here in 1C. How the Bengals going to feel about Jalen Walker?
Oh,
There's a guy in
That one
2A
I-
that I think we might need to move up.
Yeah, there's at least one in 2A. Yeah, just one.
The big dog that can't move.
Yeah, let's put him up
Oh,
here.
are
to
we
about
having the
yourself,
Malachi Starks discussion now?
you talk about yourself, Sans?
That's right.
Tyler Booker, correct.
Yeah.
Tyler Booker.
I had Booker
All right,
as a
what
1B.
would make you guys and we're setting the Bengals board, but we might as well have some fun. We do this once a year. What would make you guys more frustrated, Shamar Stewart or Tyler Booker at 17?
Booker.
Why do I have to break the tie?
They're both possible, so that's why we should put it out there now.
I don't feel like there's any value in saying which one will frustrate us more. They're both frustrating picks for different reasons. And like the degree of frustration.
That was a Duke Tobin answer.
Well, no,
that you
to
just
me,
had.
the degree of frustration is less interesting than the why behind it, right? Like with Shamar Stewart, it's Myles Murphy redux. It's like, can this guy actually develop as a pass rusher on a team that hasn't been able to develop young defensive linemen since Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap? Or is it Tyler Booker, who is another unathletic guard but has good tape? And he has good tape at least, but boy, do they sometimes see these unathletic guards get to the NFL and then they just are too unathletic to hang at that level in the NFL. And there are a number of prospects that the Bengals haven't drafted that fit that mold. So like that to me is more interesting than like which one of those is worse. I don't know.
Would you rather have Danico Autry or or Osiris Torrance?
Autry.
Yeah, I think
I would
Autry.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd be more disappointed with Booker then.
Yeah, so when you put it that way, you're putting the liability in front of Joe Burrow instead of on defense. Which of those feels
True.
better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jake.
I thought Autry was really good in Tennessee.
Autry is good, but that's Shamar Stewart's upside. I'm saying if he hits that, it's like, oh yeah,
Well,
I gotta.
You think
gotta
that's his upside?
pain in the butt? I do think that's.
I think it's
Maybe you
upside
can
a
get
little bit more than that.
maybe
That's
you can
not
hit Gregory
good.
Rousseau levels. Maybe you
Oh.
can hit Gregory Rousseau levels, but I
God.
don't see.
That's it.
I mean, he's so. The guy's had
I
4.5
thought
sacks
Autry
in
was
3
better than
years.
Russo.
It's like I'm not standing for this slander right now.
No, I'm just like, I think that Mykel Autry, like what he did for Tennessee was awesome. He was so integral to them in their playoff runs. Autry
Pain in
had
the
terrible testing numbers. So that's the main issue with that comp, I think. Like a 5-second 40 under 30-inch vertical.
Those
Go
are
ahead, Matt.
Goodberry numbers.
Do we want to try to end 1B at like 17?
And with
Like
all the
1B
talk
is
about
like where
versatility,
the top
are we sure
17.
Booker's
Go ahead, Matt.
with all the talk about versatility and the offensive line? Are we sure Booker is, really a priority, really a guy they're looking at instead of some of these guys they might be looking at round 2 that can play tackle?
I think them taking a true pure guard in the first round is the only thing or the biggest thing that would give me pause on saying they actually will take Booker ahead of anybody in this group. I think Booker might belong in 1C.
I think Booker's exactly what they usually look for better or worse in their guards.
But in the first round?
Yeah, I think they'll.
all the smoke
they'll-
seems to be he's
all the
going to go in the first round.
Yeah,
we
they'll
only
love all
have
the-
Kevin Zeitler to compare to, who wasn't an elite athlete, good athlete, but not elite, and just technically refined, great, run blocker, turned into an excellent pass protector. I think they could convince themselves with Tyler Booker getting on that same level with his
Well, they
age.
could easily say, like, all right, well, Mike Green has the off the field stuff and is smaller than we'd like. We don't
Right.
want to take a tight end. Derek Harmon has this question. Like, they could easily get there. We don't want to go with safety because we like the day 2 depth at safety. And it's just like, oh, well,
Look
we
at all
can
the
get
red flags we
guys-
have on these guys.
Yeah. And this guy didn't move his feet that fat. It's fine. Is he going to protect 9? Like, I think they could.
He'll
Just
set
do
a
it that
firm
way.
pocket for Burrow. I think he would, but just if they're going to stunt or get an athletic Myles, if they're going to let if they're going to let Myles Garrett get over him and basketball in front of him, it's going to be problems for Tyler Booker. But it's going to give problems to everyone.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Myles Garrett cross over again.
Myles Garrett's doing a
think also-
crossover. You have to call the slide. Call the slide. Hey, 55 is the mic. 95 is the mic. We're going right here. 2 guys. I'm not getting crossed over.
And then he just splits them because they're too slow to.
I'm cut
I
blocking.
think the next step then is to
I
try
low him.
and slot Malachi Starks. How high would the Bengals have Malachi Starks? Would he be above Eamon Worry? Would he be above Derek Harmon?
I think between them.
I'm the only thing I'm not sure about is he ahead of Campbell and the tight ends? I think he's ahead of Harmon.
Could
Maybe. That's hard. I'm back to being on.
I'd have him between Harmon and Manwari.
That's where I would.
I could see that. I think.
I put him below the tight end.
Yeah, I think
Is that
that's
me?
fair. I think
All
that
right.
Harmon
I
would
put
win.
him below
that.
the tight ends.
Matt Minich on that
Matt.
AOL dial-up, baby.
Matt has that Tyler
I don't know
Booker
what it is.
testing
I'm just gonna keep
internet.
going.
In the
I'm
future,
using
Matt,
one of
Hey Matt, are you
Just
using a blurred background?
going
Like, are
and
you,
we'll
or is that
stop.
just your normal background?
I don't know what it is. I've never had this problem before.
Okay.
It's not that I live in
Last
the middle of
year.
nowhere. I don't know what the deal is, but anyway, see, my thing about Starks is that I don't know. Like, I know he played a lot of deep field safety, but to me, he made his plays in the slot, and so I see him as like a Dax Hill kind of pick, where I think you're projecting in the deep field zone, but without the Dax Hill athleticism. So I just don't know how much of a fit he is.
I didn't really like Starks that much, but I mean, I think the Bengals will. It was kind of one of those for me. I like him, second rounder to me. How many guys have better film their second to most recent year? There's a lot of guys here that fit that.
Yeah.
And then they end up playing up to that film, and you could have actually just ignored their most recent film when they were healthy. Not often.
Argument
Justin Herbert?
being that he didn't take that step as a reason to think that he will not take another step.
Yeah. Like he played worse in 2024 than he did 2023. And I think the 2024 film, I don't see a reason besides somebody say he played nickel a little bit. It's like he played safety and nickel, and neither one of them was like that great. I don't know. But I think the Bengals will like him because of other factors. They're not me.
I think they'll like him because he's from Georgia, and which, that's there. There's another guy lower down that I think we'll have to talk about moving up into 1B from Georgia too.
Jalen Walker here.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about whether the Bengals have him above Mike Green if we're just talking the edge. If we're going to talk the edges, at the very least,
And potentially up there with Mykel Williams.
right?
Like
I mean, he's getting
think they
talked
will.
about as being like the 4th overall pick to the Patriots, possibly at one point. So the league likes him a lot, at least it seems.
I do think that we should not dismiss Benjamin Albright being specific about the Bengals and Mike Green. Because when he's specific about things like that, he usually is pretty on it league-wide,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
not that he's had Bengal-specific stuff often, but
I reached out to Benjamin after that, and I said, "Hey Ben, can you expand a little bit?" He says it's just from our perspective, we said it's the Bengals are really interested. And a lot of talking back and forth. It felt like more the Bengals were the team that did the most homework. It doesn't mean that they were the one that was the most likely to draft him. They are doing the most to try and figure out if he's clean and they can draft him. Which good. I would like them to do that and figure it out. But I don't know that means they have to take him. What you're probably trying to answer is because if Shamar Stewart, if Walter Nolen's gone, Walter Nolen's being mocked to the 49ers now, if Mykel Williams is gone, if Jalen Walker's gone, they may be sitting there and saying, who is the best pass rusher left for us? It might be Mike Green. Do your homework and find out if he's worthy of taking that.
Yep. Yeah. And that's why, like the Jihaad Campbells, the Josh Simmons, I think that all of those, because if you get past their top few pass rushers, and let's say they are one of the teams that has the medical red flag on Derek Harmon, they may have to go completely against that and with someone that they wouldn't necessarily, at least that they weren't expecting to take. And maybe that is a Mike Green. And a lot of people want Mike Green, but I think that the Bengals are going to be lower on him than what most of the chat or most people listening and watching feel like.
I think we need to break up this 1B a bit. If we can scroll down, Andrew, if you're still controlling that, down to 1C, and it's gotten real small, right? So I think some of these guys now, because we put everyone into 1B, which makes it difficult, we need to decide which guys do we think are the least likely from 1B to be drafted by the Bengals at 17. Whether you can envision the scenarios playing out, whatever it may be, I think we have to draw a line here somewhere. And just looking at it, I'm wondering if it's after Colston Loveland. If it's, okay, if these guys are gone, we'll take Derek Harmon, Malachi Starks, Nick Imanwari, Mike Green, Tyler Booker. Booker being the last fallback guy of that. Will Johnson, we'll figure out where we group them when we get to 1C because it's important. But I feel like they would take all those guys above Loveland, and maybe tight end is a bit of a tricky position for us to really project. But he feels like a top 10 guy for most people, Loveland and Warren. And if we drew the line at B right before Harmon, that would allow us to talk about some of these other guys that are beneath. I'm reading the comments here. People are like, what about James Pierce? What about Kenneth Grant? What about Will Johnson? Well, that agreed. If we put that line there, it may give us an idea of how to rank these guys afterwards.
You say after the tight ends or after Harmon?
I think after the tight ends, it would almost create a grouping of, okay, if we can count them up, is that 15? No, that'd be 14, right? Because we have one line above that. So 14 players here. without quarterbacks and receivers, James, I'm sorry. I didn't put the receivers on this main list just because what
I haven't paid attention to receivers this year.
I know.
So
we're in a great situation.
I haven't sent you one text about a receiver. Not one.
You have not. There's some fun
How
ones
about
in
that?
class.
It's called a record. I know.
It's just tight ends you've been sending me. That's it.
It's all about that Loveland, baby.
So if we have 14 players there in the 1B grouping and above, we're now in a scenario where that if one quarterback goes and one receiver goes, we should be picking, and it goes exactly this way. We would be picking of this 1C grouping that we just created now, which I could see them taking Harmon, Starks, Eamon Green in this scenario. Anyone want to move anyone in here or say one of these guys absolutely should be in the 1B?
I'm still unconvinced that they're taking a tight end over some of these guys, man.
I think I'd move Harmon up into 1B for them.
Like, are they really taking a tight end over these guys?
I'm kind of on Jake's side here too. I think we might like tight end for them. They might think it's covered with Gesicki and giving him a multiple.
That's why I'm not looking at receivers, guys.
Well, yeah, but they
maybe
Here's the thing, though. If the Bengals are like
the
around,
line we
around
drew
the
for
league,
tight end is the right line for 1B versus 1C, but maybe the tight ends belong a little lower in C.
what I was going to say is if the entire league, the reports are saying the entire league has these two in the top 10.
Yep.
If the Bengals do as well, let's assume they do. It's probably a fair assumption. If that guy's available at 17 versus Derek Harmon, who may be 17th or 18th on their board. You telling me they're going to make that big of a jump and not take Loveland?
Yes.
I disagree. I think they will take Loveland.
They've never done that with tight end.
They had
Like the only tight end they've ever drafted with a premium pick is Tyler Eifert when the roster was incredibly stacked and they were picking
Jermaine
later.
Jermaine
It
Gresham.
had nothing to do with the roster. It was because he was top 10 on their board.
He was top 10 on their board, if you remember the
That was
reports
it.
at that time. They were like, oh my
And they were
God, he's
picking
still
like
here.
what weren't they picking
21.
like 24th? Oh, 21. That's closer than I thought.
Pretty close. And so like Myles Murphy was just light years ahead of everybody else on their draft board. Dax Hill, same thing. Like they do stick to their board. Now we can think their board is crazy, right? With some of them in the past.
What year was
but-
Gresham?
The year
2 years
before
before
Eifert, right?
2010.
No,
I think.
Gresham was 2010. Yeah, Gresham was
Yeah.
2010. Eifert 2013.
Okay, 3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
That always felt like close, didn't it?
Sam's
it
was like,
yeah,
Eifert
tight end
2010.
again.
I thought they went back to back almost, and Eifert was just injured to start.
But yeah, I think that's the dilemma of, because if it's 15 versus 16, that's different. But if it's 9 versus 17,
Right.
it's really tough. Like why do this whole thing and go through this whole process, especially when a lot of fans aren't going to see it. But whatever tight end, if they drafted a tight end at 17, that tight end's going to play a lot. It's not like there's no spot for him. And
Let's
and
leave
that-
Loveland. I think he's more of a Bengals tight end. I think they'd have a lot of problems with Warren's profile.
Older,
Older,
Different
small
type.
arms. Yeah.
like I think they'd rather an inline, taller.
This actually, it feels a little bit like when people were big on Mayer and they were bigger on I don't know, that guy.
Kincaid.
Kincaid, Laporta, where Loveland, he moves like those guys, and Warren
Mhm.
doesn't really.
Yeah, well, almost
Yeah,
like
I'd be
Kincaid
cool with moving
plus-
Warren down to 1C, but I think Loveland should stay in 1B.
Where do we have Harmon? Where do we put Harmon? I think Harmon should be behind Loveland.
Harmon
I
is
think
ahead
James
of
is right.
Loveland right now. You think they're picking Loveland ahead of Harmon?
You're talking about one of
I
the
think
cleanest
so.
prospects versus a guy that 3-star recruit, transferred to Oregon, then had a great year, played at 330, and then came in at 313 at the combine, may have some injury issues here. I think the Bengals could definitely have Loveland with a sizable gap over Herman. Now, I don't expect this decision to ever happen. I think Loveland's gone. But just for the sake of this and trying to be,
Sure.
concise on what we're doing here, I do think Loveland is probably top 10 on their board.
I
don't-
think that makes sense for 1B.
Jake's upset.
No, I just like I'm trying to figure out how you're drafting Colston Loveland after they decided to pay Mike Gesicki. Like
I
I
don't
know
think
they're
we'll get there.
different
Because
players.
Mike Gesicki's going to play like 40% of the slots in the snap.
I know they're playing
He
different
snaps in the
positions,
slot.
but like,
I don't think Loveland's a Y to start his career. He's not refined enough to be an inline tight end at the moment. I don't think.
In 2
no,
years,
but,
I think
but
he's
maybe
got the
he's
size to
playing
do
more
it.
of the Eric All
He's
stuff.
big.
Yeah, he might do some of the Eric All stuff, but All also
Mhm.
wasn't even lining in line. It was still Sample.
And at that point, like, again, the thing that I struggle with here is you have an elite passing offense already, and you have your 2 receivers. You brought Gesicki back. They like their weapons, obviously. And now you're adding Colston Loveland, who maybe does things a little bit better than Mike Gesicki, but is going to be playing the same position as Mike Gesicki for the most part, with maybe a little bit of Eric All coming across the formation and motion at the snap in the run game. Like, I don't see that making a big enough impact. And I think that they decided to pay Gesicki. And after doing that, I just don't know that they're talking themselves into Loveland actually making an impact on the offense to the degree to which they would take him in the first round. Like, I just don't see the fit.
So you think all of those factors just tell them to make them shove Loveland down the board versus the evaluation? Because it's 2 different things. It's like questioning the fit versus the impact versus how they have them ranked, which is 2 as prospects.
But I think how they would see him making an impact on the team after they've allocated so much in terms of resources to their weapons already has to impact how they would value drafting a player like that.
Haven't we already done that? That's why he's at 14 basically right now. We've already factored that in, that maybe the 8th player on their board is at 14 because of that, because of those factors. At what point do you say, all right, we're going to take Loveland over Tyler Booker, over Mike Green? Like, in my mind, I would take Mike Green over Loveland because I think I'd want the edge rusher. But at some point, you need to draft that guy that's potentially, with that score, high on their board.
Maybe it's just Harmon. I'm okay with Loveland going ahead of Booker because Booker is a pure unathletic guard. I can see that. Ahead of Green because small school, size, I can see that. Ahead of safety, one of the 2 safeties, I'm not sure which yet because of fit concerns. I could see that. But I think that over some of these higher value positions where they have a desperate need, I think it would have to be like they think Colston Loveland is going to be. I don't even know. Like, he would have to be a player that like, I can't even come up with a good comp for him in the NFL for me to think that would be the difference to them winning more games and winning in the playoffs.
Mike Ditka.
Sure.
I mean, if he's Sam Laporta, it matters a ton. Just
how many more games do you win in the playoffs with Sam Laporta instead of Mike Gesicki? Like, what's the marginal difference?
You beat Kansas City, you beat Baltimore one because your offense is all those drives where your offense kind of dies down and stalls. You have a whole nother option.
No, I don't buy that.
Boyd got
Gesicki
hurt in
was
that
cooking
Chiefs
against the
game.
Chiefs.
If you're now with Mike Gesicki and Colston Loveland, I mean, you're out there with
So you're
Drew
drafting a
Sample.
depth pick? You're drafting
Drew
an
Sample
injury
is tight
contingency?
end 1. He played 650 snaps last year. You had
You'll
And
still
how many of
know
those is
why.
Colston Loveland taking?
Half of them
He's-
easy.
half,
Probably
yeah,
He's
more.
still the
develop him
inline
there.
Y. I think he's still the inline tight end, even
I
if you
agree.
draft
Agreed.
Loveland.
Loveland can play in line some though, right away.
You develop him to get
Some.
there so that he's better.
The way
than
Mike Gesicki
Sample.
can play inline some. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the
Oh,
way
no,
Mike
he's a better
Gesicki-
blocker
like
than
Mike
the way
Gesicki.
Mike
Don't
Gesicki
use
has to
that.
try to
Gesicki
block
can't
Brian
go
Burns
online.
on the
He is not
backside of
Mike
zone.
Gesicki at blocking.
He's going to be a
Relax.
Gesicki's a worse blocker than some of the receivers.
Man. You're going to tell me that a rookie Colston Loveland is going to be trusted in this offense to block defensive ends?
No.
A rookie?
No rookie is. The truth about a lot of these rookies is the impact is going to be minimal.
I think they'd have Harmon over Loveland.
I
I'm
could
on
see
Jake's
Harmon
side.
being. I would have Harmon over Loveland. I think I could see
It's
that.
not really about us. I'm just having a hard time seeing them really believing that a tight end is making that kind of difference to the
They
offense.
passed on tight end so much. That's really the argument.
Yeah.
Is they have bypassed and said, "We'll take the next guy."
Like Laporta was lower than Murphy on their board. I'm just giving that as the example. Like
And they
Tucker
love
Kraft was
Laporta.
lower on
And they love Laporta, right? Or
yeah,
people did.
So, yeah, people did. And so people may love Loveland, pun intended, but does that get him the ranking that he needs to have to be that pick? I think Harmon versus Loveland is
interesting.
really intriguing. Yeah, I get why you guys lean Harmon. And you better believe that they'll get ripped if they pick Loveland over Harmon, even if consensus-wise across the league, Loveland is considered a better prospect. And I think that is the case.
That might be the point, James, is that ownership gets involved eventually, right? Like the optics of the team does come into play at some point, and you don't want it to. You want it to just be strictly evaluation and coaches and personnel people. But at some point, someone goes, "Are you telling me we're going to take a tight end?" And and it makes an impact on how you stack your board. And I think that there is some truth to that they'd be like, "Come on, we're not taking Loveland. You're taking Harmon. Look at his pass rush win rate. Look what he's done. He's a D tackle. He can help the team."
If they draft Loveland, by the way, this room will be open. We'll be ready for live. Whoever wants to join, just saying.
Oh my God. It will be.
They passed on Laporta in a time when they needed tight end more than they need it now.
Yeah.
And they didn't need Murphy at the time.
Loveland was cleaner than Laporta, though.
Yeah.
Like
I like Loveland more than I like Harmon, but I think the Bengals would take Harmon over him.
I gotcha. And it's tough. I truly don't know. And let's pull it. Harmon or Loveland. Let's go. Jake says Harmon. We already know.
I'm gonna put a poll in.
Patrick says Harmon.
Jake doesn't.
I know it's Harmon.
You got Harmon, Jared?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. I'm waiting to figure out
delayed.
why, like how Duke Tobin is talking himself into Colson Loveland being the impact player the Bengals need to get over the hump. Like I could see like one of these offensive coaches trying to stand on the table for him, but is Duke really there? I don't know, man.
I think the offense looked different when it had all in it, so I can see why you'd say that Loveland can make a difference. He can do that stuff, but he's an even better receiver than All was by a lot, I'd argue.
Much better, yeah.
But I think also
completely.
But also you'd argue that what James said earlier about they signed Rankins because they wanted to fix the interior pass rush. They haven't had one since Geno left. They did not sign anyone this year to replace Rankins. So I think that the clear answer is they have to draft one. And Harmon is arguably the best one in this draft, if we're being honest.
Yeah. They didn't sign any pass rushers. I mean, that's the thing. That's how they can get to Mike Green. If Mike Green's the pick at 17, first thing I'm gonna say is they needed pass rush. They did nothing to help the pass rush this offseason. It was one of the worst pass rushing teams in the league. You don't know what's going on with Hendrickson, and Mike Green is one of the best pass rushers in this class.
Yeah.
So I
agree
wanted
juice. They wanted juice, so they got it. And Harmon brings the juice on the interior. Like
No
that's
doubt.
the one.
They're arguing with the one pass rusher they have.
They are. Maybe they don't even want to rush the pass.
They don't.
We're
They just
thinking
want to
this.
stop the run, man.
Turns out the Bengals are philosophically opposed to rushing the passer, and that's why they just they begrudgingly extended Geno Atkins and.
All right, let's flip them. Harmon over Loveland. That's how we are. That's how we landed. I think that's fair.
And I don't think we'll have to face this conversation actually. So let's put Harmon over Loveland for now.
That was.
I hope we do. I hope we do. I want to see their feet to the fire. I want to see their feet to the fire because I think board wise, it could very well be the other way. And do they go Harmon or do they just rank Harmon ahead of him because it's Harmon and it's a defensive tackle versus what's actually cleaner? Which we may never get the actual answer to that. All right,
so the next step now
moving.
is most of these guys could be gone. Like the only guy that actually might be there is Harmon and maybe Jihaad Campbell of the B grouping. And that means all of these guys that we've put into this next tier really are the conversation here now that we spent the first 90 minutes getting there.
Oh, we made it
This
80
stream can
minutes,
start.
boys. Let's talk about the players the Bengals could draft.
Now it actually may be. I mean, there is a couple guys that could be there, right? Banks could be there. I don't expect
they're going to get one of those guys. Watch.
Yeah.
I think they'll get a 1B guy.
You think it'll be Harmon, and then we're like, all right, that's the last 1B guy we
Well,
have.
unless we're wrong and they have a 1C guy rated higher.
One of our 1B. I think Stewart, Nolen, Banks, Campbell, Loveland, baby.
Simmons has a chance to be there too. Simmons could fall far. It depends a lot on the medicals.
Now maybe they pass on that guy, but I think a couple of those guys will be there. Anyways, let's get into the Starks, Eamon Warren, Mike Green debate.
Thank you.
My last note real quick on the 1B group is that Several people have mentioned that Simmons did have a meeting with the Bengals in person, so that is
Oh.
something that
Interesting. Okay.
we
We didn't have that in our sheet.
Ooh.
check on.
1A.
Neil,
Hey,
get
put
on
'em
it.
up,
I know you're
put 'em
watching.
up.
Where you at, Neil?
One.
Yeah.
Several people
Where's
have
Neil
cited. Anyway, yeah. So potentially
Jake
a
is
visit
fired
there
up
to
right
look
now.
into.
Okay. Anyone
I
from
heard
this new makeshift 1C grouping,
I'm done.
anyone
Bad
that
energy.
absolutely has to be the pick for the Bengals at 17 if available, do you think?
And I think the top 5 and maybe Jalen Walker is a tier above the other 4 there. I think that the other 4 there are probably below those 6 pretty comfortably.
You're saying like Jalen Walker should be the 1C, the top 1C, and we could go from there?
Yeah, I would say so.
Is it like this? Is that what we're? Is that what?
That's
we're
what I
saying?
would say.
Take that line out of there then.
No, I don't see it. He's
I
You
don't
think?
like it.
You think
so
this line is
small for
lower?
what they do.
Oh, Jalen Walker.
Yeah, Jalen Walker. That's right.
What are you saying about this line? Do you think this line should go lower?
Make all those guys 1C for now, that grouping.
I'm just sneaking Josh Connerly in there because that's what the people want.
I mean, he should.
He
He
probably
probably
is
is
for
in the
them.
back half
He's
of 1C. Yeah.
Oh boy. All right,
The-
let's see here.
This is why when like you hear national draft guys lately, they're like 15 through 40 is jumbled because it does feel that way.
I mean,
I
that's why
don't
that's one
cosmic
of the reasons
gumbo.
this is so hard for us this year too, is
Yeah.
because there's so little
No doubt.
separating.
I don't
I think
think.
Starks still would be high for them.
Yeah.
Starks?
He's the guy that stands out of this grouping that I think like, and maybe we're right. Maybe it's Starks, Walker, Warren. You know, those guys, we don't expect Walker to be there. So maybe he deserves that spot and they're in line with the rest of the league.
I mean, yeah, Walker could be way the heck up there, but we're
Sure.
never going to find out. Or
He could be a
maybe he
top
falls into
1B
the
guy.
second round because the NFL's like, oh, this guy actually doesn't play either of his positions at an elite level.
Right.
The Bengals are on the clock and they're debating, well, not debating, but do we take Walker or Stewart? And it just rips everybody's hearts out. That
I'm sitting here looking at Connerly, and he's got to go way up.
way up.
Way up.
Yeah,
You mean way
can
up.
you-
I
can
can't.
you-
I'm surprised I didn't. I must have missed his name or accidentally deleted it or something. I think he should be like, probably in the Tyler Warren, Mike Green, Booker area.
Can you-
I think
can
he
you
should be up in that
explain
range.
for all the Bengals fans on Twitter that think Josh Connerly is like for sure the Bengals first round pick, why there's this sentiment out there? Because I missed that memo.
He's 21 years old. He's got all the length. He's an elite athlete, and he played at a program that he played in the Big Ten this past season, and he played really well.
He did. He had the best game against Abdul Carter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't think he has NFL play strength right now, but
Right.
he's so young. He's one of those people where you just wonder if he can pack on some more weight because he looks a little bit slimmer than the rest of these guys.
He's the next best offensive lineman. And if these linemen go top
Mhm.
13 or so, 14, like the next best guy, in my opinion, it's not Tyler Booker, who the
Mhm.
old media still wants to push him there. Me, it's Josh Connerly.
The old media. Look at you.
So
This is new media here.
And he's a tackle. Like that, his position is more valuable. So I think he'd be up there. And I think
we're
they
saying-
could see him as a guard.
He is a
Cle-
mismatch fit at guard for me, though. He's a guy I don't see at guard, and how
Me
you get him
either.
on the
I'm
field.
not. I this is not my personal opinion. I think this is all Bengal conjecture.
So we think Connerly clearly ahead of Booker, correct?
Yeah.
Clearly
In my-
ahead
I
of
hope-
Gray
I hope
Zabel
so.
because
Sure.
Gray Zabel went to South Dakota State, North Dakota State,
I
And
don't
he's
think
older,
they're that
and short
interested in
arms.
Zabel.
and he's older,
Right.
and we do know Scott Peters.
How dare
liked
you,
long.
Liscow?
My bad.
Matt isn't on
Dakota
delay
State.
anymore.
Yeah, Matt's
Yeah.
doing it straight now. Look at him.
Let's
My
go,
God.
baby.
He showed
Well,
up
did you
in
bring a
4K.
crew in there to film what's going on? My goodness, this is
Beautiful.
this is like
Yeah.
cinema XD
Only
IMAX.
took
My
me an hour and a
goodness.
half.
You did it.
Soon to be Skinamax.
Okay.
Leave
It's
Nick
getting
Scrotum out
pretty
of this.
late, man.
We're not after dark yet. Oh no, we're way after dark. It's 9:40. Holy.
I don't think they're
Moving
taking
Connor, gotta
Connerly
blur it like Skinamax.
over
Ahead of the
Starks,
safeties?
Eamon, Worry, or Green, though.
Okay.
Nah, I agree with that.
Ooh,
I would be
Connerly
surprised
Green.
if they had Booker over Connerly. I wouldn't, but
I can see them
They
having Booker and
definitely
Connolly.
seem to like Connerly.
Mm-hmm.
Those multiple visits with him, right?
Yeah.
He's another one.
And Booker, what was their contact with Booker?
None reported.
None?
I don't think.
None reported on Booker.
They just emailed.
Zoom.
Y'all ever? Anyway, I'm gonna get distracted. We're still on the internet. Okay.
AOL Instant Messenger.
It's not facts.
You were like a baby when that came out, James. Be
Hey.
quiet over there.
ASL, Mike Brown said. All right.
James is like, I heard about this ICQ. I'm gonna call it out.
Can we? Where do we think they would actually pick Will Johnson? Like,
I
Will
would not
Johnson
have Will
today-
Johnson or
Round
Jade
two.
Barron in this tier at all. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
them in round 1 for them.
That's where I'm going here. Either of those good enough fits for what Al Golden wants to do.
Not at all. I would take both those cornerbacks out of this tier entirely.
Matt, what do you think? Since you do a lot of focusing on defensive backs, how do you feel about Jade Barron, Will Johnson? Is Barron just a slot guy? Can Will Johnson? Does he have the athleticism to man up?
I think Johnson really does. I think Johnson's a playmaker. I mean, and I think, yeah, I think he can play man, but I also think he's gonna get picks for you. And like, really, that's what you want when you have a great offense. You don't need a great defense. You need a defense that's going to give that offense more opportunities from time to time. And I see Johnson as a guy that can make reads and can get picks and can do that. I'm not as high on John Day. I don't see necessarily the fit for him. But yeah, I think Will Johnson's that guy.
Yeah, I do think that they see the skills with Will Johnson. And it's just a matter of when are they comfortable pulling the trigger on a corner. And it goes into the positional element of it. Now, we know their history. They have a history of picking corner. It's been a while since they picked one in the first round, but it's not something they haven't done. And so I think Will Johnson could be in at some point here, but it's probably on the lower end because I don't think that they're taking Will Johnson over Mike Green or Nick Emenwari or Malachi Starks or, Tyler Warren. And then
Him not running, right? Because they draft speed at
It's
corner every
huge.
time.
And then he has this workout scheduled after, and he doesn't run. Like,
And his
what the hell
agilities
are
were terrible, the one that he did.
Yeah, he's got injury and athleticism concerns. I just don't see the fit with the Bengals. I also while I'm on the warpath, I guess, I also don't think that Kenneth Grant would be in this tier for the Bengals right now.
Man, look at Patrick just.
Anything specific? What they do, what they like?
Just because he profiles less as a pass rusher and more just a big body run stuffer, and they signed Slayton specifically to be that. They have honestly, he kind of compares a lot to McKinley Jackson for me in terms, obviously like a higher tier McKinley Jackson, but this big body who's kind of out of control a little bit sometimes, and he can really look like one of the best players on the field some reps, but then it's not consistent and he's not much of a pass rusher. So I just don't think he's a good fit for the Bengals along with either of the cornerbacks.
I agree. I think James Pierce potentially could be a little bit higher than those corners and maybe even just under Tyler Booker. You know what I mean? Like in terms of where do they get to if they have to make the decision? And we're too far down now. They shouldn't have to get to those guys.
These are trade down guys. Yeah.
These are like our trade down. Who's still there? All right, Connerly's still there at 23. We're taking Connerly. Mike Green's still there at 23. We're taking Mike Green, right? I think the Bengals would be in on Starks, Emenwari, Green, Connerly, Booker if they trade down. Like those guys, maybe even James Pierce should go far enough. Those guys seem definitely like Bengals type of targets in a trade down scenario. You're on mute, James.
Am I still muted?
No, you're good now.
Oh, okay. That was weird. I think Pierce is one of those where he's definitely just passing downs, and they don't love that. They're not going to love that. But if you're getting him at 25 and you've already added an extra pick, it feels much different than you're taking him at 17 as that guy. It just does. And who knows? Maybe we're talking about a guy that falls. I've seen some mocks where he does fall into round 2, and I think if you get him somehow at 49 because of the maturity stuff, you're dancing because it's great value. So, yeah, I think he would be in the mix in a trade down. I don't think he's getting real consideration at 17.
I think Scourton would be in the consideration over Pierce, to be honest, for the Bengals.
More complete.
He's next. I think if we scroll down one spot, he might be the next guy here.
Oh, there you go.
Nick Scorton.
They'll like his size. Scrotum, as Mensch called him.
I'm looking up his name now to make sure I get this right.
I think it's Scorton.
Scourton, right?
It's sour like sour. Somebody said it wrong before, and then I said it all wrong. But
it's
yeah,
SCOR
like sour.
TON.
Scorton.
There's a
Isn't
U.
it SCOUR?
It's
There's
right
a
in front
U.
of you.
Yeah,
but
there is a U.
it is
Oh, yeah.
pronounced according to the Beast as Scorton.
All right, all right.
Okay.
To reference the beast, but I
Scoring
think he's
with
a better
Scorton.
fit. I think he's a much better run defender. I think he's a more complete pass rusher too. He just doesn't have that freakish athleticism that Pierce has. And to me, I look at Pearson. I feel like he either runs around the corner or he's out. You know, like when somebody gets his hand on him, I think he's screwed. Like I don't think he looks like a receiver running around. You know, I don't. Could he be really good? Sure, maybe. I think that's a Jerry Montgomery conversation though. I don't think he's a guy that's going to come in and be a great pass rusher for you as a rookie, even if you're only using him for 10 plays a game for that. I think he's a guy that he's a Myles Murphy, except Myles Murphy was at least a good run stopper in college. I think he's a really strong projection here.
I think they would have Landon Jackson above James Pierce as well.
Yeah, there's potential. I'd like to nominate Donovan Izaraku as well. I think he's he's good against the run. I mean, what did Duke Tobin say today, right? You need guys that are good against the run first, and we'll get them on the field. Donovan Izaraku is one of the best run defending DNs in this class. So they'd all be in that grouping. I think if they had to trade back to 30, 31, 32, I think that's why they'd be at the very back of this. And Nick Scorton, to finish, he's 20 years old still. He's one of the youngest players in this class. There's a lot of development still to go. And when he was at Purdue the year before, he was really good. That tape is really, really good. Much more explosive. He looked like he was carrying 280 this year at Texas A&M, and I don't think that's him. I think he's a better football player than Shamar Stewart. He just does not have those traits, I think, but he flashed those much more when he was at Purdue. So I think the Bengals could really like a Nick Scorton if they ended up trading back even further on this. But I think with 15 or so minutes here before we get to 2-hour mark, we should really try to say for these top 5 or so, Connerly to Jalen Walker, and maybe Walker's gone, so really don't have to take too much time on it. But Starks, Emanori, Green, Connerly. Is that the order? Or would they take Mike Green over Starks? Would they take Connerly over Emanori? Is there any way we can decipher them? Because after that, it's all trade down. After that, we really don't even need to concern ourselves too much with it unless they do move down, which would throw this whole board in the chaos anyways.
The debate for me here is Starks and Emanori. Honestly, yeah. I think Green, it would be third, Connerly probably fourth. It's just the two safeties and the fit. And that's what's so tough about it is figuring out what they want. And do they just want the guy who can be the deep safety and they're confident in that, and they'll disregard some of the testing stuff for Starks because of where he played and how productive he was? Or do you go with the genetic freak that could be a playmaker all over the field and be 6'3", 220-pound gadget guy that could also probably play deep if you need him to? Gadget is the wrong word, but you get my point. A versatile chess piece.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going to fall on that. And
it's so tough. That's such a tough one.
When we talk about allocating resources and how many do you spend on tight end and other positions, they have spent so much at safety to replace Jesse Bates and have failed to do it continuously. It's why you don't do it. It's why you just keep your guys and just, even if you pay them a little bit more, right, to freeze up your draft picks for the next 3 years, and you don't have to do the Dax Hill song and dance and the free agents they brought in. Having said that, would they say Green, a pass rusher, one of the last pass rushers? I feel this way about Green and Connerly. I feel this similarly. Like once those top guys are gone at edge, at offensive line, okay, the next guys, Mike Green, Josh Connerly, would they take that over the safeties? I think there's potential for that.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I think they would take both of those before they took a safety, because like you were, and it's something I've been arguing. I mean, they've drafted Tyson Anderson and Dijon Anthony and Jordan Battle, and then they've brought in Geno Stone. kind of like we were talking about with the tight ends, like they have paid that position. Does that knock it down their board because it's something they've invested so much in and still kind of know little about their young players? So I think I would put both Green and Connerly up over him.
But we do strongly believe, perhaps a better word choice here, that they are interested in challenging Geno Stone.
Does
Sure.
it have to be in the first round, though?
No, but it has to be probably in the first 2, most likely.
First 2 days, I would say.
Yeah, you can get
There should be some
Makuba in
decent
3.
guys.
right.
I don't know if that's the guy the Bengals are going to draft.
There's a
How
ton
much
of
do
guys.
they
though.
like the Marshall guy? They met
Yeah,
with the
they'll get a
Marshall
guy in the
Yeah.
6th round. JJ
Roberts.
Nelson, is it?
But
Roberts,
Roberts.
but what they may say is let's get the pass rusher here
Right.
because they're similar and hope Kevin Winston's there, because if he wasn't coming off of an ACL, we would have him up there with these other guys anyway. And it may be that because I think they love Kevin Winston. I don't
This
know.
DN
but I
class
think,
is pretty strong as well, though.
no doubt.
What class?
The defensive end.
Oh, I mean, I want
rushers,
Ashton.
though later, more Landon Jackson types, and even Jaloti is going to kick inside a lot. you know.
Gelati, baby.
We like him,
Yeah.
but he's not a pure edge that Mike Green is.
Sure. They're allergic to that though. They're like,
Yeah, do they even want that?
pure edge.
I
We
mean,
want you to be
You-
versatile.
AJ
baby.
Roberts, maybe that was just getting even more intel on Mike Green.
Well, somebody
Or maybe it was
asked
the
me
other
if
way
it was the other
around.
way around. Somebody asked me if Mike Green said the guy he would bring with him from Marshall, as Duke Tobin was
JJ
talking about this in his press
Oh,
release,
that
was
was
Roberts.
Good call.
Good pull.
Oh, yeah.
JJ Roberts looks like a dude. Like if you just
He
looked
can
at
play.
him- yeah.
I've heard other evaluators talk pretty highly about him. He's like one of those guys that was hiding because Mike Green was causing so many issues.
Mhm.
Somebody,
and if he could catch, he would have been. I think people would have been like, "Oh yeah, this JJ Roberts is good. He's up in the air, twisting, turning, and then he doesn't come down with it." I'm like, "What are you doing?"
I've seen him on some sleeper lists for sure. Him and
Nick Martin is somebody I've heard.
Nick
the past
Martin,
couple
Mike
of weeks,
Renner
yeah.
had him on the list today.
So
Mhm.
so JJ
Kyle
Kyle
Roberts
Krabs
2A?
had him last week in their linebacker rankings.
Mhm.
JJ Roberts 2A then is that what we're going?
Yep. JJ Roberts, first round pick. Put it in pen.
They're saying Nick Martin could be a fringe first rounder.
No.
No,
No,
No, we're
Oh,
I'm
okay.
trolling. I'm trying.
The
Look at
sleeper.
this half listening. Look at this.
No, I was
Is it
like,
like
I was
catches
like,
up and he
wait,
falls
wait,
asleep on
get
it?
that here.
Does anybody want to? Then let's try and decide this. Would they take Green over the safeties?
I think they probably would.
yeah,
Probably.
I think they would.
I would say if they
I don't
are.
think so.
So somebody said, I think in the chat that McShay said the Bengals are, and I don't know if McShay knows, but McShay said that the Bengals are comfortable with Green and Pierce. And if that's the case, character-wise, Pierce, I still think lower as a prospect. But if they're cool with it from a character perspective, probably the asterisk there, the completion of that sentence is at some point.
Right.
Then is that point that they're taking those guys ahead of the safeties? I would think so, if that is true.
Right. If they're comfortable, Mike Green. I mean, and like take the draft spreadsheet. It is what it is, but he's a top 12, I think, prospect in this class if there wasn't these issues from his past, because the guy is the most agile pass rusher, the most explosive rusher, can run around any offensive tackle, spin moving on, and he's a nut against the run. I think he is very, very good on tape. Yes, it's at Marshall, so you don't get a ton of high-end competition. He did have a sack against Ohio State. That was beautiful. But I think he'd be a high caliber prospect if he was clean.
Yeah, I think he's like around where Banks Simmons area. If he does not have any off-field issues, I think I would have him around there. But
right.
We don't know. We can't know what is the truth there.
So the way I would say it is because if you're putting Green ahead of the safeties, then you're saying they're not going safety first round unless they trade down. Just to firm that up. And so that's basically
Good way to frame it.
At 17, because you're saying that there's no way they take Starks. There's no way they take him and Ward, which is fine if you guys feel that way. But that's just.
I mean,
are you saying that because you think
why
Green's
would
going
they
to be
take
there for
Starks?
sure?
Like,
Because
what's the big deal with Starks?
you look
Why
at the
would they
board.
trade down to slots and take Darius Watts if you want a deep field guy, and get the guy that Golden knows. Like I don't think you're taking a big talent hit there. And they've talked about wanting to get some more capital, and so I mean, I think you make a good point. I think Eamon Warrior is an asterisk because he's different, but otherwise, yeah, why not trade down? I don't think there's anything that pushes the needle for me with Starks.
And again, the Winston Jr. lingering, just him alone. If they end up having a injury aside, let's say he has a first round grade for them, late first. Well, then they could be comfortable going that. So yeah, I think we're moving Mike Green up.
And keeping Geno Stone gives you that buffer that Winston, doesn't need to be the guy right away.
Yep. Do we
revisit with Eamon Warrior? They met with Malachi Starks at the combine. They met with Mike Green at the combine, plus recently reported multiple touch-ins with him.
Do we think that he's ahead of Jalen Walker, or are we fine with Jalen Walker at the top of 1C?
We probably will never have to answer that.
There.
Probably don't have to answer it. So let's not spend time on it. That's fine.
Let's take
gone,
him off.
right?
Let's just
Yeah.
do one of these, and we'll just bam.
Yay!
Fine.
I mean, I'll leave him there, but
Yeah, leave him there.
Oh.
Yeah. No, we don't need to delete him, but let's. He just doesn't exist.
on the sheet, not in real life.
Jake was trying to delete Zach Moss earlier before we started too. So
Yeah, he was just some
He was trying to
anti-Moss.
delete him.
Oh my god.
I like moss on rocks. I don't like moss in my yard.
okay.
Oh,
We're getting
all
to
right,
the end
so-
here then. Is it
No.
By the way, I don't know
we
if
gotta
anyone
get this
commented
right
on it,
now.
but
The
Mike,
competitive juices are flowing now. I want to make sure that we firm this up and make sure
Yeah,
we
me too.
repeat here, fellas. So let's dive in here a little bit. It's gut check time.
Starks or Eamon Warrior then?
That's the
Eamon
debate.
Warrior.
Starks.
Huge debate. I think
Yeah,
because they're
I'm
different.
so back and forth. I'm so back and forth with it.
I tend to with the Bengals. I tend to go back and say, what were the rankings in
Save.
January? And the Bengals are like, we'll take that guy,
Yeah.
which would be Malachi Starks.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it
I-
personally, but I see where you're saying from the Bengals perspective. I can see that.
So many divisive prospects in this class.
Yeah.
There are so many questions we can't answer either.
I will remind people that don't get caught up too much on Malachi Stark's RES score because he has really good GPS data.
Good GPS data. He ran a good 40. It was just really the explosive stuff and a little bit of agilities in that.
Yeah, the explosive thing is what it is. That's like a flag on his profile for sure athletically, but like the agility stuff, he had the top speed in the agilities,
I know.
which like I can't like make that math, but
And he had the top speed for pretty much everything, I think, when we got the GPS data from the combine.
Let's leave it there then. Stark's ahead of
Okay.
Eamon Warrior. It's tough. It's close. We have them right next to each other. Okay,
Matt, you think? Hold on, one last question here. I just want to get Matt's take on this. You think Starks is a bigger projection into the Bengals defense than Eamon Warrior?
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't think. Like I think Eamon Warrior's got a lot more upside. I think he could be a lot more. I think you have to fit him within that. I think you're building around Eamon Warrior. Like when people say, I've heard people say like, well, you can't take Eamon Warrior because you have Battle. Eamon Warrior is a talent that you don't let
Right.
Jordan Battle
You're not close.
not let you not take that guy because of Jordan Battle. So you got to figure out how to get him involved. I think Malachi Starks, you're taking him and you're trying to make him the safety, and I just think he's better in more of a slot type of role, or at least that's where he's made most of his plays. I feel like most of his big splash plays have been from that position. So
So
I just-
isn't Eamon Warrior essentially an overhang defender though in college? Like, is he really playing much safety? Isn't he playing a bunch of man in the slot and like overhang stuff?
No, but that's what I'm saying is, I think that Eamon Warrior is a player that has the talent where you're like screw it or figure out how to use him. I think if you take Starks, you're looking for the free safety to you want Starks to complement Battle to some extent, even though one's the first pick and one isn't. I think Eamon Worry, like, he's the guy, and you make everybody else fit around him, just because I think what he can be is a high-end talent overall.
I think part of
I
what
have trouble
makes this
comparing the two of them because I don't think they play the same position really.
I think part of what makes this really hard is that we just don't know. Like, is Al Golden a guy who is trying to run his system, or is Al Golden ready to draft a guy like Nick Worry and build a defense around him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do they think he's Nick Hamilton? I'm saying Kyle Hamilton. Like, do they think that he's the next Kyle Hamilton that is worth building around and bringing in to be this playmaker and this guy that's unique, that isn't going to be the next Jesse Bates, that isn't going to be the next Xavier Watts, that isn't going to be any of those things, but it's going to be
Mike Brown's telling him he's David Fulcher, right? He's like, this guy's huge.
No doubt.
He can do everything. I can move him all around.
Mike Brown isn't going to say no. Like David Fulcher, yeah, exactly. Huge safety, best safety the Bengals have had.
And they moved all around. He was Troy Polamalu
years.
Stuff before that was even a thing, So I mean, like, they're probably looking at Eamon Warrior like, we could do a ton with it.
Which I guess if we're going to put him in C, then he's below Starks. You know what I mean? Like, if we're going to put him in C, if you think he's that guy, then he's not in C. He's going to be at least in 1B, maybe even 1A.
Let's talk about fit a little bit more. So say that they draft Eamon Worry, and that means you're keeping Geno Stone, and say that Al Golden does what we expect Al Golden to do, which is to play a ton of single high, and that means that Geno Stone is probably your post safety and 1 or 3 for 60% of the Bengals coverage snaps. And maybe Eamon Worry gets back there for some snaps because he's not going to play in the box all the time. Nobody does in the NFL. They both have to be versatile. If that is the plan, which is easy for me to imagine, do we think Eamon Worry fits that role? If we expect Al Golden to approximate his schematic approach from Notre Dame to the NFL. Like,
I do. I think that safety has to cover underneath. He's got to cover the slot. He's got to do these things. He's got to match up with tight ends. That is exactly what Eamon Worry does.
He's got a body to match up with Mark Andrews and I think he really is. And then you got potentially Dax, and the other slot. I think you're really strong in coverage in the middle of the defense. They're
versatile.
Not so much with Stone, but in the slots there with those two, I think you're really strong in coverage.
All right, there's the argument we needed. Boom.
So Eamon Worry ahead of Starks.
It's tough. It is very tough.
It's so tough.
That's what I heard. I heard the better fit for Al Golden's defense, if Geno Stone is going to be the other safety if they draft Nick Eamon Worry, is Eamon Worry's a perfect fit for that. Versus if they take Starks and you're playing Starks in battle.
You are.
With Stone situation.
Or you move on from Stone completely and you take that money and you give it to Trey.
And who's your leader back there? Starks is one of those guys. Starks, Eamon Worry, they say character,
who's your leader back there?
mental. Right. Those are your guys. But those would be both are expected to assume that role rather than later, right?
Like in year 2, there will just be a leaderless group on defense this year.
That's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with Eamon Worry, but I could totally see the Bengals saying Starks. It's all about the vision, by the way. If they're aligned there, it's all the words that they've used. If that's true and they take Eamon Worry, I think he's going to be really damn good because that means that everyone is on the same page. They clearly weren't on the same page with Dax Hill, which is why he's played 7 different positions since he got into the league.
And that might scare them away from Eamon Worry and say, Starks, we know what we're going to do with him. We're not going to figure it out and build around him. And Starks, we're going to make him our free safety.
Or it's the other way.
The argument you guys just made is the conversation that they've probably had. Is if we're drafting Nick Eamon Worry, how does he fit in your defense, Al? Oh, you're going to keep playing a bunch of single high. Okay, great. What are the matchups that we're going to see if Nick Eamon Worry is that guy in this defense? And then it's what you guys just talked about. He's manning tight ends and he's athletic box defender in some other cases. And okay. Maybe they do.
Also, couldn't you make that argument with Starks? So I don't see why that has to be the case. Starks has nearly 1,200 free safety snaps in his college career. One of the youngest players in this class as well. 48% of the time as a deep free safety. He's done a lot of slot. He's done a lot of strong safety. He's done everything, but he has a ton of experience as your free safety. So if you're saying at the same time, yes, I could see the vision for Immanwori and his argument for where he would fit and how we explained it, I agree. I think he would be a great fit for that. But that doesn't mean Malachi Starks is not a good fit and couldn't develop into that free safety captain role you need back there. He has shown some great range. And I think we haven't even seen it completely because you go back, this year wasn't as good because I thought Georgia said, we're going to do more with you, Malachi. We're going to let you cover the slot more. We're going to let you do these different things. We're going to move you all around. And I think the other team started to pick on him a little bit and expose him a little bit, and that made him look worse. But overall, I think if you went back a year, again, we don't want to make this argument too much because a lot of guys like that. No doubt they're looking at like that's our free safety of the future. That guy's a top 15 pick.
Man, we are really stuck in the mud here. Patrick, go.
I think that this year, just compared to the last 2 years, I feel like the last 2 years you could really narrow it down a lot better just because I think there's a lot less questions with the guys around the winter we were. Like last year, it was just like they're going to take the best available offensive tackle or Byron Murphy pretty much, and that's where we are. And that's why I ended up having. They took the best available offensive tackle. Well, this year, it just feels like it's just like, okay, if Campbell's there and his injury clears, maybe they take him. If Harmon's there and his injury clears, maybe they take him. If Green's character clears, maybe they take him. If they like the safeties, maybe they take them. So I feel like this year kind of feels like you're not going to be able to narrow it down to one guy compared to the previous years for us because there's so many questions that can only be answered by being in that front office. So, character, injury, scheme fit. And it just, I hate to be the person to say, we did all this and we're not going to be able to definitively say this is
we won't know
picking.
until Thursday. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that this is really interesting this year just because there's so many more questions around the guys right where we're picking.
Yeah, we're going to. That's why this is like the final. That's why I'm like really stuck on it because this could be it. Like this could be the pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I think the point is significantly more the process than the exact order. Like it's nice to get it right. Don't get me wrong, but I'm less interested in that than
of course you are.
Everything.
Me and Joe
it.
are the competitive. Like I definitely want to.
Joe's all right.
They do this for 3 weeks every day. They don't get home till late. Like this is what's happening at a larger scale, more in-depth scale, heavy. They'll stop and make calls and then come back and finish the arguments and be like, okay, let's get some more dirt on this. Let's see what we can figure out.
So y'all want to make calls and pick up in like 30?
Right.
I mean, Jake would love
Time
that.
for lunch. We'll come back. We'll figure this out. I don't think we've come to a resolution today with Immanwori and Starks and even Connerly. I think it's interesting. Andrew, if you could zoom out a little bit because of all the red flags we put in on this page, if you were just to say, all right, they're going to get here, and let's say they wanted to actually take a clear guy. Let me see B and see if we can, Andrew, as much as possible.
Let me get rid of this comment here. By the way, Mike Santagata, he was here. He lost power, his whole neighborhood. I don't know if we can establish that on this call. He's been gone this entire time, and nobody else noticed. But I just read the
Bengals did it. You know why the Bengals cut Mike's
by the way,
power?
I think is hilarious because there was a tornado this time last year when he was on, and he made it through the entire thing. He made it better than Minich right now with his quality during a torneo. And
I feel for Matt. That happened to me last year. I was kind of
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew it was.
All right, sorry, where am I?
I feel your pain, man.
if you zoom back in, Andrew, I just added a filter and took off everyone with anything in the character column. Anything with a flag column.
Where am I going? What are we saying?
Leave it right here. Leave it right here.
Okay. All right.
So Jake has removed anyone with a character flag on the right side.
Any flag. Age,
sure.
Well, so I
and maybe they're okay with Walter Nolen, right? Maybe and he's there. Maybe it's more medical, but they could be sitting here picking between. All right, we hope Walter Nolen or Kelvin Banks are there. Maybe it's Colston Lovely. If not, maybe it's Mike Green, Immanwori, Connerly, and I could see that being there. And wherever Starks is, but Starks for athleticism because they've drafted guys like that. Yeah, and I could see that being their process of the hoping for Nolen, Banks. Maybe, we don't expect Simmons to be there, maybe, but Campbell, Green, Immanwori, Starks, Connerly, and that's the grouping, right? That's the grouping they're hoping to select from at 17.
Yeah.
It's one of those years where if it was easy to do this visually, that subboard thing that you mentioned, Joe, is more applicable this year than ever. It's a bunch of if-then statements. It's if Nolen, character good, then Nolen here. If injury question good, then these players here, you know? And like Patrick said, there's so many of these questions that we will not have answers to until Thursday night or even Sunday, Monday after the draft that make it harder this year.
All right. Last thing, because I know we're at the end here. And again, this is me definitely trying to get it right. So I'm going to ask if it's Colston, Loveland, Mike Green, Nick Imanwari, and Malachi Starks on the board. Just those. Are they taking Loveland?
Sorry, you said who?
Loveland versus the next grouping.
Loveland, yeah. Basically, I'm just taking Walker out of it at 1C and saying Loveland, Green, Imanwari, Starks. I'm just making sure that we think that we'll take Loveland in that scenario.
Jeez.
I think
know.
yes. I think
When you say it, it just
I
know what I would do, but what would they do? And that's what
You're saying those four guys?
Those four guys.
There's a chance if Mike Green passes their character background and they look at it and say, you know what, this happened 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it is, and he's been fine since then. He's ended up a captain at Marshall. Like I said, if their process is anywhere close to ours, Mike Green is and I don't think it is, but Mike Green is very, very high on their board. And I could see that being a situation where they're like, all right, we got the 8th guy, Loveland. We got the 11th guy, Green. We're going Green.
Yeah. I can see that if they have Green that high. Now I wonder, like with the size wise and the small school and all that, like that's what's tough.
It is tough.
So I was just trying to look at where the rankings were, and I'm like, all right, where's the spot that I'm like, are we right here? And this is the area that concerned me a little. I think it might be right, but
I think Imanwari and Starks are almost impossible to split.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with leaving that as it is. I think Green is very difficult because we do not know how they're going to feel about the off-field stuff. I think Loveland is difficult because he's a tight end.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think the character stuff for Green, we've seen them give the thumbs up on stuff like that and overlook that.
We've also seen them knee-jerk the other way.
Have we?
Right? Like when they go into drafts and they draft like 7 captains and 7 picks.
Yeah.
He was a captain.
he was a captain.
Oh shit! All right. Well,
Right. He's a hard dilemma. He's a hard one because he ended up being a captain.
Teammates love him.
And then do we think that he's that again the
zero
football
actual
element,
legal
too.
problems is also he has they're all hearsay for the most part. It's not.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like any actual legal.
Well, Carmen's wasn't legal either, but they got bad press when his came out late.
There was a
in that
police
article.
report with Carmen. With
That's
Carmen,
true.
I don't think there's even a police report for Green.
Right.
Well,
That doesn't
there was
mean that we're not going to
There
hear
was
the
just
story
a
later.
dismissal from the team at Virginia.
Well, that was
he had to
supposedly
sign a zero
tolerance.
tolerance agreement with Virginia and Marshall. So they believed enough on their background check that hey, we need to. You mess up one time, you're out of here.
And despite that, in the Beast, strong character feedback from coaches at Virginia and Marshall. Charles Huff says he's the most humble human being you'll ever meet.
Well, that's why I reached out to someone and they said this stuff is true that this happened a while ago, but it will never happen again with Mike Green. And I was like, okay,
That's a lot of confidence. I mean,
that is a lot of confidence. But
I made this. If when we're talking about what happened with him, it's a lot easier for you to talk about how good his character is and how great he is around everyone when he's on a football team that's all men.
That's true.
For being
That
honest.
is very true. That's a great point. The stuff that he's accused of, the 2 sexual assault charges, are much less likely to be discussed.
And if it's 2, how can you say it'll
Negatively
never
by a
happen
coach.
again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should just leave it. I'm because there's enough there to where Green would be in one seat.
Can we get a full zoom out on this then? Before we...
I will
I'll
say
put all
that
the players back in here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the view until it's not.
they don't
I'm in
mind.
control.
They don't mind going for those guys sometimes, but they always love to get value out of those guys. You know what I mean? It's always,
trade down.
it's always a value proposition. So,
Trade
maybe
down
that
for
everything
Mixon.
belongs
Trade
to
down
one
for
seat 'cause,
Carmen.
if they see that, like, oh well, this is a
Matt.
It's a fitting,
We lost you, man. That's why we're laughing.
It's perfect.
I'm going to screen capture that for a thumb. It is a thumbnail. It's a thumbnail inside the video. Let's
Perfect
see. We've got-
encapsulation of how this.
Yeah,
night is
you
gone.
you got delayed there. All right. Do we think this is the board? Do we think we got it?
You want me? I'll work my way
I
down.
think it's real good.
I think
So,
mine might be
Pretty good.
Every year after this happens, we do this video, and every year after this happens, we get more information between Monday and Thursday, and that's going to happen again, and then we'll come make our adjustments. And this will
I
be
think
a
this is
living,
the
breathing-
because we've done it. I think this
It
is
is.
the latest we've done.
It
though.
is.
Like we tried to.
It was usually the week prior. I feel like.
But there's still adjustments that happen. Is my point.
Of
Like,
course,
we
but
learn
yeah.
more, and then we adjust.
Just worth noting that this is the closest we've been to the actual draft that we've done this.
But the
I
video
mean, like
was
2 days
correct
ago,
every
I would have
time.
had Mike
So-
Green lower.
Oh, for sure. The video has been correct every time. The show has been correct. We haven't. We will adjust
Uh-oh.
internally and amongst ourselves, but the show has ended up being right. when we
Yeah,
got there.
we've nailed it. So we're going for the 3-peat. It's really hard to do.
I think we will too, and I think it will be someone in the 1B grouping.
Yeah, I think
That's
so
why I
too.
haven't stressed too much about the siege. C is trade down, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think Campbell or Harmon are there.
Any
Maybe
final
Loveland.
thoughts? We'll go down the line. Matt, we'll start with you just in case you drop off.
There you go.
Oh, hopefully the prediction of this board is about
right.
that moment right there. Is just
Jake,
encapsulates
any
what
final
this board
thoughts
will be.
before you eat dinner? Because you're 3 hours behind us East Coasters.
I'm so hungry. That is my final thought. No, I think that one thing that stands out to me as we get through this process is we need to do a better job of defining 1A, 1B, 1C next year at the beginning when we talk about this procedurally.
Is that your real final thought?
I mean, it's pretty close to it.
I feel like
think
that's an
that-
offline thought, but okay, you can have your thought. I'm not trying to take away from it.
Well, it seems like you have a lot to say right now, Andrew. I think
I
that-
don't.
I think that it's legitimately a bit of a thing where the way that these groups are thought of are beginning of first round, middle of first round, end of first round. And so the Bengals are smack dab in the middle of the round this year, which I think confuses the groupings a little bit. Outside of that, I think that all my thoughts have been articulated as far as the number of questions that are out there and how difficult it is to parse those with only external information available to us.
Give us a prediction then at 17. If this board falls right, who would it be?
I still think that Walter
Andrew,
Nolen
scroll
makes
up a little.
the most sense to me as the guy that crosses the nexus of most likely to be available and guy that they would like best.
Jared, final thoughts?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my previous prediction. I think Shamar Stewart is going to be
Your boy.
He will be the 17th pick.
Your boy. Buy the jersey, draft guy. Jared.
If Jeff Hobson announces it, it'll be Shema.
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 Now I kind of want.
Shema. Why don't you have enough sacks, Shema? All right, Patrick.
My final thought is I just want to say we never got to the end of the groupings, but I would say that I think Carson Schwessinger would have been in 1C for the Bengals.
Nice.
But my prediction, I think they take Derek Harmon. I think he's the guy there from 1B, and I think they're going to take him.
Love the call on Harmon. That's who I said a month out. It's now I feel like we're seeing more and more mocks. I feel like everyone adjusted, and Harmon should go in the top 20 in my opinion. I think he's worthy of that pick. I just still think Walter Nolen will be there, and if not, then they go Harmon. But I'm still going to go with let's hope, fingers crossed a little bit, that Walter Nolen's still available, and that's who they're picking. Final thoughts for this though. Again, I enjoy doing this because I love this process. I wish we could do it every day for hours and go into every minute detail of every versus prospect here, and maybe that's side content we do in the last few days here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Shamar Stewart. I do. Because Walter Nolen could totally see him going ahead of 17. If Nolen's there, even with the board set the way it is, it probably means Stewart's gone, and it gets Nolen to 17. And I could see them going that route. Don't sleep on the Loveland. I'm just saying, I do think that there are scenarios where that happens, but certainly defense is where the Bengals want to go. I think in their ideal world, they would bolster their pass rush at 17. They're not going to force it, but I think that's their plan as of now. Andrew, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm good.
I'll talk about your shirt though.
Yeah. Where's that from?
So
Jen
many
flashes.
Yeah.
That was like $1,000 shirt, right?
Get that in
Someone
1996.
told me to burn it. By the way, yeah, like this
I
one
still
I'm wearing
don't
now,
give a
this
shit.
is
That's
$150 out the door. Like, and this is not that complicated. They have this one shirt that costs $1,000 because the pattern's so wild. I want that one so bad. Thank you. No, this is the one person that didn't understand the entire time. Everybody else seems to understand. It's just, yeah, Dan Flashes. Of course it's Dan Flashes. What is wrong? I spent 2 hours just sitting there, just swallowing these awful comments. That shirt scares me. Get out of here. You didn't find anything else that scared you in this 2+ hours? Nothing? Who just talked? Who was it? Was it you, Jake? Go ahead, Jake. Go. No, because I've said 5 sentences in these 2 hours. Go,
We
Jake.
just talked. I didn't say
It
anything.
was me. I said, did you save all these comments?
I blame Jake anyway, Joe. But Joe, go
I
ahead.
appreciate it. No, that's all I had to say. I didn't know you had all these comments ready. That was impressive.
I mean,
No, I had a
has
lot of
any of
comments
the
ready.
6 of us
I just
not
started removing
seen,
them as
I
they
think
weren't
you should
pertinent.
leave?
But the shirt was always pertinent. Yeah, I think you should leave. Yeah.
I think you should leave is really good. It is. As is this every single year. We'll see who the Bengals pick. Make sure that you follow everyone everywhere. A lot of them have their handles there. Look at Draft Guy Jared. Also, Mike Santagata, we hope your power turns back on at some point, who dropped off at some
Yeah, have a
point.
tornado rip through next time so you don't lose your power again. What is that?
Yeah, it's wild. We'll see if we get it right this year. As always, thanks to everyone for watching and listening. For Jake Liscow, Draft Guy Jared, Mike Santagata, Patrick Carlisle, Joe Goodberry, Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching Cincinnati Bengals Talk.